Hello, I'm Ally, a 29-year-old woman. I grew up in a single-parent home after my dad passed away when I was very young. My mom never remarried and worked tirelessly to feed and clothe me. She never hesitated to share her struggles with me, which made me feel deeply indebted to her, even when she treated me poorly. My mom often complained about the hard work she put in to provide for me, yet she constantly criticized me for my weight. I remember the first time I felt self-hatred. I was 8 years old, and my mom caught me eating a bar of chocolate after dinner. She yelled at me, saying I was getting too fat and ugly for her liking. This only worsened as the years went by. I tried talking to her, but it never helped, only more insults came my way. The irony was that I wasn't even fat or ugly. I was of normal weight for my age and height, and I received a fair amount of attention from boys. I couldn't understand why my mom hated me so much. When I turned 18, I wanted to move out, but I didn't have the funds. So I stayed with my mom while attending college. It was there that I had my first boyfriend. He was charming, handsome, and your typical jock. I fell madly in love with him. We got together in our second year and stayed together until shortly after graduation. I was convinced he was the one for me. Of course, my mom hated that I had a boyfriend and would always praise him while simultaneously insulting me. This didn't help my already fragile self-esteem. My boyfriend and I decided to wait a year before getting married. However, 2 months later, he suddenly broke up with me. I was confused and hurt. When I asked him why, he just looked at me with disgust. In that moment, I sought comfort from my mother, but instead of consoling me, she laughed and said, "Thank God he left. He deserves so much better than you." I was shocked. "What do you mean?" I asked. She replied, "He was madly in love with you, but with a little nudge from me, he saw the light." "Are you saying you made him break up with me? What did you say to him?" "Oh, nothing you don't already know. I just opened his eyes to how ugly you are. Once he saw it, he didn't want to marry you." "What's wrong with you? How could you do this to your daughter?" "Stop being so dramatic, Ally. I know you're sad, but for your own sake, don't indulge in sweets. It'll make you gain more weight." That was my breaking point. I had saved up a decent amount of money from working part-time. That night, while my mom was asleep, I packed my things and moved out. I stayed at a friend's place until I got my own apartment. It took a long time to heal, but eventually, I started putting myself out there more and regained my confidence. Sometimes I felt sad that my mom never made an effort to call or check up on me, but I got over it. Once I felt better, I would check in on her occasionally but kept our contact minimal. Then I met Holt. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop and ended up sitting in the same booth because the place was full. We started talking, and he turned out to be an amazing guy with a great sense of humor. We exchanged numbers, and the rest is history. Holt and I dated for 3 years before deciding to make it official. During those 3 years, I got to know Holt's family, who accepted me with open arms. This was a very healing experience for me. I told Holt about my history with my mom, and needless to say, he wasn't her biggest fan. I was incredibly happy to be marrying Holt. I felt like I was on top of the world. It was amazing to be loved by someone so wonderful. My looks didn't matter, and part of me wanted to shove that in my mother's face. I knew it would be petty, but when your own mother bullies you about your looks from the age of 5 until adulthood, you're bound to feel that way. Holt and I began planning the wedding immediately after we got engaged. I kept my idea of revenge on the back burner because I wasn't sure if it was morally right. About 2 months into the planning, Holt asked me about the guest list. "So, who are you thinking of inviting?" "Well, my close family and friends. I don't think I'll have a lot of people to invite." "All right, I don't mean to be insensitive, but when you say family, are you asking if I'm going to invite my mom?" "Yeah, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want some confirmation, you know. I was actually thinking of inviting her." "Oh, really? How come?" "Okay, I know this will sound mean, but I kind of want to rub it in her face. I've become who she always told me I wouldn't be. She used to constantly tell me that no man would ever love me because of my looks, but here I am." "Oh, honey, I don't think that's mean at all. In fact, I fully support it. It's the least mean thing I've ever heard, but it's perfect considering everything that your mother put you through." "Really? So you're okay with it?" "I am, as long as you are. Although I will say that if your mother says anything rude to you, I will interfere." "That's absolutely okay. Thanks for supporting me." "That's exactly what I'm here for, isn't it? It felt great to have Holt validate my feelings. He knew about the extent of the damage my mom did to my self-esteem, and yet he was more than willing to accommodate me. I felt a new wave of excitement. I couldn't wait to brag to my mom about my marriage. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man, but also a man who showed me in every way possible that he loved me more than anything. That was definitely going to embarrass my mom. As we finalized the technicalities of the invitation, like the look, fonts, and paper, I couldn't help but wonder how my mom would react. Would she go red in the face from humiliation? Would she apologize? Would she, for once, be proud of me? I know I seem naive to only think about the best-case scenarios, but I couldn't help it. Even though I barely contacted her anymore, she was still the only parent I had, and I wanted some form of a relationship with her. Don't get you wrong, I would never forgive her that easily. She put me through years of therapy because of her bullying. I would make sure she apologized properly before cautiously building a relationship with her. Whenever I had a negative thought about her reaction, I pushed it away because I didn't know how I would deal with it. When it came time to print the invitations, Holt and I sat together and handwrote the names of our guests. We wanted to do a traditional handwritten invitation. When I was writing my mother's name, Holt was looking over my shoulder. That's when he held my hand to stop me. I looked at him in confusion. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just. Do you not want me to invite my mom? No, it's not that. That's your mom's full name? Yeah, why? You guys have different last names. Oh yeah, my mom kept her maiden name after she got married. I got my dad's name. That's funny. Why? What's wrong? I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I have an employee with that same exact name. What? That's crazy. Yeah, she plans to retire in another year or two. This is super weird. I mean, your mom's name and maiden name are not very common. Do you think? I don't know which company she works for, but do you maybe have files of your employees on hand or even a staff picture? Oh yeah, of course I do. Holt shot up from the couch and ran into his office. My heart was pounding. What were the chances? I had always believed the world was small, but for it to be this small was crazy. Holt came back with his laptop in hand, and we sat down together to find a picture of the woman with the same name as my mom. Thankfully, the company had just had an event recently and a lot of pictures were taken. Holt and I scrolled through the pictures before I finally saw her. It was my mom, laughing at something someone had said. She was holding a drink, laughing at something someone had said. I stared in shock for a couple of seconds before bursting out in laughter. Holt asked if that was my mom, and I confirmed it. He didn't know much about her beyond why I kept my contact with her minimal. We shared a laugh because it was truly amazing how the universe had aligned to put my mother in her place. Not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man who loved me, but I was also marrying my mom's boss. That was definitely something I wanted to brag about. I hoped for her sake that she would be on her best behavior because she had no idea what she could be risking if she tried to say anything against me. When we finally sent out the invites, we received a ton of responses almost immediately. I tracked them to ensure they reached their destination safely. When I saw that my mom's invitation had been delivered, I anxiously waited for her response. But over a week went by, and I heard nothing. I began to lose hope that my mom would come to my wedding. I tried to tell myself it was no big deal, but she was my only parent and getting married was the biggest event in anyone's life. Of course, I wanted my mom there, even if she just sat silently. Holt could see that I was down and comforted me. He reminded me that regardless of whether my mom came, it would still be our day, and we would be surrounded by people who loved us. I began to feel better, but I wasn't fully convinced. Then finally, my mom's RSVP came in. She said yes. That was it, just yes. It hurt that she didn't even call to ask about who I was marrying or inquire about the wedding. But at least she would be there. I messaged her, asking if she would like to be part of the rehearsal dinner, and she replied with another simple yes. Having my mom there was a win. A small win, but a win nonetheless. I felt happy. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. Meeting my mom after 3 years made me anxious. I made sure my dress was perfect, my hair was in place, and my makeup was flawless. I couldn't help but think that I didn't even make that much effort for Holt. My mom walked into the rehearsal dinner and found me immediately. Holt was busy talking to someone else in the hall, so she didn't notice him. She made a beeline for me, My hands got clammy as she approached, but I calmed myself, reminding myself that I had the upper hand. She greeted me with a hug before looking me up and down and laughing. I felt myself shrivel up inside, like the helpless little girl I used to be. "So who's the unlucky guy? I see you still haven't become skinny, so you must have found some ugly hobo." "Mom, that's beyond rude. Oh please, whoever is choosing to marry you while you look like this must be clearly blind and very unlucky." "Actually, I think you're the unlucky one, Quinn." "Holt, what are you doing here? What do you think? Didn't his name look familiar to you at all?" "Well, yeah, but I didn't think." "You didn't think what?" "That your daughter would be capable of marrying someone like me because you think she's too ugly? Or am I enough of a hobo to be able to marry your daughter?" "No, well, I didn't mean it like that. Look, you're on thin ice. It's bad enough that you've insulted me, but if I hear you say one more word against Allie, I swear I will make your life miserable." "Okay, but I must say, Allie, you're an absolute piece of work for purposely going after my boss. What did you think it would do for you? Did you think I would go easier on you?" "I didn't purposely go after your boss. We only found out when we were sending the invite, but I did hope to mend our relationship. I guess that won't be happening. Enjoy the rest of the dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow." Holt and I walked away hand in hand. Once we were out of her sight, we dissolved into laughter. The look of absolute horror on her face when she saw Holt was unforgettable. I had hoped for a much nicer interaction, but seeing her put in her place was actually more satisfying. I was so caught up in my emotions that I didn't even notice Holt walk up to us. But I was glad he had managed to come right in time. The rest of the evening passed without any other incidents. The next day was hectic. However, when it came time for the ceremony, all I could feel was immense pride. Seeing Holt stand at the altar with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk down the aisle made all the hours of getting ready worth it. I happened to scan the crowd and spotted my mom. She noticed me looking at her and pulled a face. The same face she always made whenever she thought I looked ugly or fat. I stumbled for a second, questioning everything. I knew I looked beautiful, but seeing my mom's expression made me feel very insecure. I looked at Holt and all my doubts vanished. He still looked at me like I was the only girl in the room. Other than that, the ceremony went off without a hitch. Holt and I exchanged our vows through tears, and the crowd cheered as we kissed. On our way to the reception hall, I told Holt what had happened earlier. "So something happened during the ceremony," I began. "What happened? Are you okay?" Holt asked, concerned. "Oh yeah, I'm fine now," I assured him. "Good, then tell me what happened." "Well, when I was walking down the aisle and I stumbled a little." "Yeah, I was a little worried. I happened to look into the crowd and saw my mother making the same face she always made to tell me I didn't look good. My God, what the hell is wrong with that woman? How could she do that to her own daughter on her special day? I don't know, but in that moment, all I wanted to do was run away and cry. But then I took one look at you and felt all right. That's right. If your mother does something like that again, just look at me. You're beautiful and nothing your mother says or does will ever change that." "Thanks, I needed that. And I was serious when I said I would take action if your mom did something against you again. Now that I know just how much leverage I have over her, you best believe I will make sure she learns her lesson properly, and I'll be okay with whatever you do." The reception started off well. We began with dancing and drinking, and everyone was having a great time. Holt and I greeted all our guests and had conversations with them. I found myself feeling better with each interaction. At some point, I saw my mom walk into the hall, but she ignored us and went straight to the bar. I felt a little bad, but figured being ignored was better than being told I looked ugly again. So I let it go. Holt kept me by his side the entire time, which I appreciated because it was a great distraction. Finally, it was time for the toasts. Holt started with a heartfelt toast to us and our relationship, which made me cry. I followed with my own toast, and I was happy to see that I made him feel the same emotions he made me feel. If there was one thing to mention about the toasts, it was that with every toast made to Holt and me, my mom scoffed. She received a lot of dirty looks, but that didn't stop her. At some point, she stood up and said she had a toast to give us. My heart dropped. I knew my mother, and I knew how evil she could be. I knew this would not end well. Holt held my hand, and when I looked at him, his jaw was clenched. At least we both felt the same anxiety at that moment. My mom began talking about how I was undeserving of Holt. She praised Holt for being a great boss and a wonderful man, then conveniently brought up that he was her boss. When she spoke of me, she kept talking about how ugly I was and how I should be grateful that Holt even spared me a glance. I felt sick. How could she say that? Holt looked like he was going to burst a vein from how hard he was restraining himself. The rest of our guests looked appalled. Finally, when my mother finished her awful speech, she sat down with a satisfied smirk on her face, happy with the reactions she got. Thankfully, the rest of the evening proceeded without anyone mentioning what my mom had said. Holt and I tried our best to put it behind us for the night. Even when we got back home, neither of us spoke about it. There was an air of sadness, but we chose to ignore it because we were happy to be legally and officially together. The next day, Holt left for work. He told me something urgent had come up but promised to be back by noon, so I didn't mind. True to his word, Holt came back home by noon, and we settled on the couch to watch some of our favorite shows. An hour later, I heard banging on the front door, along with my mom yelling for me to come out and open the door. I was confused and looked at Holt, sensing his urgent business had something to do with my mom. I walked to the door and opened it. "You absolute wretch. What did you say to him, huh?" she yelled. "What do you mean? Don't play dumb. You made him fire me." "Holt fired you." "Yeah, and I'm sure it's because of something you said. You're so stupid you never know what you say." "I'm going to have to stop you there, Quinn," Holt interjected. "I don't think I need to remind you of your speech from yesterday. You praised me and completely dissed your own daughter, who is my wife. How did you possibly think that was okay? I told you I'd make you regret it if you even said a word against her." "Whatever. You can't fire me for that. I'll sue you. You've also been highly negligent with your work. I was going to fire you anyway, but kept you for a few months only because you are Allie's mother. Since you have no respect for her, I see no reason to help you out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're busy. Goodbye." I couldn't believe it. Holt stood up for me in a way I hadn't even considered. Holt held me in his arms as I cried. I finally felt free. I felt valued and respected, and I knew I never wanted anything less than that from then on. I didn't care to find out what happened to my mom after that, and neither did Holt. The two of us continued to live our lives in blissful ignorance of her whereabouts. I've learned just how important it is to have and enforce your boundaries. Don't let anyone treat you like you're worth nothing because, to someone else, you mean the world. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah, and this is my story. The story centers around my mother-in-law, Suzanne, who has been cut off from both me and my husband, Mason. She's also estranged from my father-in-law, Cody, due to her own actions. Let me tell you how it all happened. Buckle up, because this is a tale of serious karma. Mason and I have been together since high school. We were the quintessential high school sweethearts who made it to the finish line. Yes, Mason and I were deeply in love. My family adored him and welcomed him as one of their own. However, I hadn't met his family before our engagement. When I brought it up, Mason would say, "Why do you want to meet them, Sarah? I already told you, my mom is not a great person." Despite Mason's warnings, I insisted on meeting his family. I believed that no matter what, they were his family, and I wanted to try to have a good relationship with them. Cody and I met accidentally at an event, and he was charming and friendly, so I couldn't imagine Suzanne being that bad. How wrong I was. I finally met Suzanne after Mason proposed. Naturally, I said yes because he is the love of my life. At that time, he had a well-paying job, and I was running a successful knitwear business. Everyone said I was talented, and Mason was very supportive. With everything going well, we decided to get engaged and settle down. When I knew I would finally meet his family, Mason was anxious, and I soon understood why. Cody and Susan invited me to dinner at their house. The perfect opportunity to meet them in person. From the moment I arrived, Suzanne's judgmental gaze made me uneasy. The real tension began when we started discussing careers. I mentioned, "I'm running a knitwear business. I learned the craft from my grandmother, and here's some of my work." Cody praised my work, saying, "That's some great work, Sarah. I had no idea you were so talented." Mason added, "She's good at this, isn't she? I keep encouraging her to expand her business." Suzanne, however, scoffed. "Well, she should be unsure. This is far from impressive. Knitwear is so old-fashioned. Who even wears this crap? She's wasting her time on stupid hobbies. I can get these for $2 at Goodwill. You don't have to brag about her." Cody intervened. Suzanne, stop being childish. It's embarrassing. You have no right to humiliate Sarah. She is our guest and our future daughter-in-law. Oh please, Cody. She's the one with the embarrassing hobby. Who knits sweaters nowadays? I'm only speaking the truth. At least she's good at something, Suzanne. There's no need to put her down. You're being unfair. Someone needs to tell her the truth. Listen here, Sarah. Let me tell you something. No one is going to buy this. You're deluding yourself if you think otherwise. You need to look for better jobs. Mom, stop being so mean to her. What she does is none of your business. Leave her work alone. I'm just looking out for you, son. The way you and your father are drooling over her work, she may get the wrong idea about her skill. It's practically useless. I hope she understands that. That's Suzanne for you, folks. This woman is vile and extremely toxic. It was clear to everyone that she was jealous, though I couldn't fathom why. I had gone to the dinner hoping to make a good impression on both Susan and Cody. While Cody took a liking to me instantly, Susan was hostile and mean. When we got home, Mason said, Sarah, please don't mind my mother's words. She's always like that. This is exactly why I didn't want to introduce you to her. It's okay, Mason. Maybe she just feels a little uncomfortable with me. Did I do something wrong today? She seems to dislike me a lot. Babe, she's like that. She didn't like how Dad and I gushed over your business. She hates when someone compliments others. She's super jealous. That's one reason why we're not very close. I guess she sees you as competition now. But she doesn't have to worry about me. I hope she will understand eventually. I'll try my best to show her that I'm not competition. Well, that was super naive of me. Susan never changed. Despite my best efforts to reassure her, it only seemed to infuriate her more. She absolutely hated me and didn't want to be around me at all. However, since Cody liked me and I was Mason's fiancé, she had to tolerate me. Things never got better, even after Mason and I got married. In fact, she often went out of her way to insult me. Thankfully, Mason and Cody shut her down pretty quickly. By then, I was done being nice to her. I pretty much ignored her until one day, when I got a call while working on a commission at home. When I checked the number, I saw it was Susan. I was actually pretty surprised. Given the bad blood between us, I never thought she would want to talk to me. I picked up the phone and she said, Hello, Sarah. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Actually, I have an order for you. You know my birthday is coming up. Yes, I know, Suzanne. Cody called to invite Mason and me to the party. What do you need help with? Well, I was thinking if you could make me a nice sweater. It's getting cold outside, and a light sweater would be a nice addition to my wardrobe. Sure, Suzanne. I would love to make you a sweater. You know what? It can be your birthday present. Do you have a specific design in mind? Yes, actually, I do. I'll send you a picture. It's a bit complicated, though, and I was thinking about the color lavender. I've been wanting a lavender sweater for a while. I love that color. Are you sure you can put in the effort? Don't worry, Suzanne. It won't be a problem. Besides, we have plenty of time. I'll be happy to do it for my family. Great then, I'll send you the picture. Make sure it's ready for my birthday. I want to show it off to everyone. After hanging up, Susan sent me the picture. I was excited to start the work, even though I knew it was a difficult pattern. I wanted to please her and repair our bond, so I agreed to do it. When Mason got home, I told him everything. You know, Susan called me today. She said she wants me to make her a sweater. I think she's starting to come around. Seriously? Mom asked you to make her one? Yeah, she wants to wear it for her birthday next month. She does want a complicated design, but I can finish it in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That's a lot of work, babe. My mom hasn't been nice to you. Are you sure you still want to do it? You can say no. I know, Mason. Frankly, I think it's a bit odd too, but I'm willing to give it a chance. Even if she doesn't like it, I can take it back and sell it. Keeping this in mind, I started working on the sweater. It turned out to be a difficult task due to the complicated patterns. I never showed Mason the final product because I wanted the birthday girl to see it first. I guess that was one of the many mistakes I made. Mason and I arrived early at Susan's birthday party. It was a grand event organized on the lawn of their home. Several family members and friends attended, and everyone was truly enjoying themselves. I handed Suzanne the gift and said, Happy birthday, Suzanne. Here is your gift. Why don't you open it and see if you like it? Thanks, Sarah. I'll open it when everyone arrives. I want everyone to see what you got me. I bet they'll be jealous. Sure, if that's what you want. I can't wait to see you wear it. Back then, I had no idea why she was stalling with my gift. She opened all the other presents but kept mine for the end. When everyone had arrived, she finally turned to the group and said, I see that all of you are here. As you know, Sarah here likes to do some knitting in her spare time. I don't know if she's good at it, but we will see in a while. Let me just open her gift and find out. Show us what you got. I'm sure it will be beautiful, someone chimed in. Susan opened the gift and saw the sweater. Everyone started murmuring praises and I felt very happy. However, Cody and Mason looked a little confused. Sarah, why did you give Mom a lavender sweater? She hates the color, Cody said. Wait, what? I'm confused. Does she hate lavender? That can't be true, I replied. Yes, she really does hate that color. Don't worry, it was an oversight. The sweater is super pretty though. I see you put in a lot of work, Cody reassured. Yeah, she actually spent 3 weeks making it. I saw her struggle a lot but wanted to make it perfect, Mason added. Well, this piece is trash. First of all, everyone knows I hate the color. She shouldn't have used it. Besides, I don't even like knitted wear. Don't worry, I know exactly what I need to do with it, Susan said. Suddenly, Susan took the sweater and tore it apart. I was in shock, and so was the whole table. Honestly, it felt like someone had stabbed me in the chest. 3 weeks of hard work just went down the drain. My work was ruined and my heart broke. I could feel tears in my eyes. Susan looked satisfied with her work and smirked at me, saying, My, will you look at that? I thought the color was horrible. Turns out the quality is equally bad. Good thing I tore it before someone saw me with this ugly sweater. Now I don't have to wear this hideous lavender thing. Why the hell would you do that? How can you be so heartless? I spent 3 weeks perfecting the design. Do you know how complicated this design was? How could you just tear it apart? I cried out. Like I said, I didn't like the color. It looks disgusting. I'm not an old lady who wears lavender. You should have thought about that before giving me that monstrous thing, Suzanne replied. Mom, you could have just returned the sweater. Why did you have to destroy it? That was horrible, Mason said, visibly upset. That would be dramatic, son. The sweater was clearly of cheap quality since it tore easily. I did myself a favor by getting rid of it. Your wife should have known better than to give me this atrocity, Suzanne retorted. I know the color is not your favorite, but you could have told her that, Suzanne. There was no reason for you to destroy the sweater, Cody added. I don't care if she didn't know I hated the color. She deserves this, period, Susan said coldly. Hearing those words made me absolutely furious. I couldn't believe the audacity of Susan. I understood that she planned to humiliate me all along. She made me work on the sweater so she could embarrass and laugh at me, but no one else was amused. Everyone looked horrified. Even Cody stared at the destroyed sweater in disbelief. That's when I knew it was time for revenge. I wiped my tears and took out my phone. Then I said, You have some nerve criticizing and destroying my hard work. I can't believe your audacity. You're telling everyone that you hate the color, but you are the one who told me to make a sweater in lavender. What? What are you talking about? I would never say that. I hate the color, Susan snapped back. That's not what you told me in your call. You're lying to everyone. I never said that. You're making things up now. You have no proof that I told you to use lavender, Suzanne insisted. I actually recorded the call to have a clear idea of what you wanted. Looks like I hit the jackpot with it. Here, let me play it for you. I took out my phone and played the recording. It clearly showed that Susan had played me dirty. When everyone heard it, they knew Susan had planned the entire thing. Susan turned pale and looked down at her hands. Mason and Cody looked ready to explode. When I stopped the recording, Mason said, Mom, what the hell? Why would you do that? You always told us you hated lavender. Even after this, why did you tell Sarah to use that color? Obviously because she wanted to humiliate me today. Why else would she do this, Mason? I interjected. No, that's not true. There's been some misunderstanding. This witch here is setting me up. I hate lavender. I would never ask her to make something like this, Susan stammered. Mom, stop it. Everyone heard the recording. Why are you still lying? Is this because you're jealous of Sarah? Mason demanded. Why would I be jealous of her? She's a worthless girl. She deserved to have her nasty work destroyed. Susan snapped. That's enough. How can you still lie to everyone and call Sarah a witch? And you want to see people get what they deserve? Let's get started then, Cody said sternly. What do you mean, Cody? What are you going to do? Suzanne asked, her voice trembling. I'm going to divorce you. Enough is enough. I've dealt with your jealousy and destructive personality for years. I literally begged you to stop and get therapy, but you never listened to me. Today you crossed the line. I'm done with you. No, Cody. Please, how can you say that to me? I'm your wife. You can't frighten me like that, Suzanne pleaded. I am not threatening you, Suzanne. I am serious about this. You won't be my wife for long. Now get out of this place before I say something stupid. Susan tried to argue, but no one would listen to her. Actually, everyone at the party started to berate her. Even her friends turned against her. It seemed she did have some good friends, but it also seemed they wouldn't associate with her anymore. Susan was crying and wailing at the top of her lungs. After some time, Cody gave her a stern warning and told her to go to her room. When she left, Cody apologized to me. I'm so sorry, Sarah. You got humiliated in my house. I shouldn't have let it happen. Please forgive me. No, Cody, please don't apologize. It's not your fault at all. This is all Suzanne's doing. I am at fault, Sarah. I should have dragged her to therapy or divorced her sooner. I kept enabling her, thinking she would change. Looks like it will never happen. This time, I won't forgive her. Honestly speaking, I felt bad for both Mason and Cody. Mason already didn't have a good relationship with his mom, and this event made it even worse. He told Cody that he wouldn't be in contact with Susan again. The people at the party supported both Mason and Cody. They even complimented my work and told me I had talent. I surprisingly got some new orders from them. Overall, the event went well for me. When we returned home, Mason reiterated that he would never let Suzanne come near us again. He also apologized to me because his mother had messed up big time. We talked about the issue and decided it would be best if we never kept in contact with Susan again. Cody followed through on his promise of divorce. Within a week, he had the papers ready. Because of a pre-existing prenup, Susan was going to get nothing from Cody. She threw a fit and even called Mason for help. She got so unhinged that Cody came to stay with us. Later, Susan actually showed up at our house and demanded to be let in. When we refused, she kept shouting at all three of us. How dare you choose Sarah over me? I'm your family and you easily picked an outsider. I'm your wife, Cody. You can't do this to me. Mom, you need to leave. We don't want you on our property. Dad doesn't want to speak to you, Mason said. He has to speak to me and so will you. I will never let you two walk away from me. Your witch wife won't take you away from me. I will make sure she disappears forever. I won't let her steal my family. Susan, you need to leave our property now. We don't feel safe around you, especially now that you're threatening me, I said firmly. Susan absolutely lost it and started kicking our door. She even managed to break a window with a pot from our garden. Things got so bad that we called the police. Immediately, she was arrested and taken to the station. All three of us then filed for trespassing and harassment. We even got restraining orders against her. It has been almost a year since the incident happened. Let me just tell you, she is not my mother-in-law anymore. We were able to get emergency restraining orders against her. The neighbors saw everything, and our security cameras recorded the whole event. She was charged with trespassing and had to pay us for the destruction of property. Cody was also able to get divorced from her fairly recently. She has not contacted us due to the restraining order. Cody is still living with us, and we don't mind it at all. All of us needed to heal, and staying together helped a lot. Currently, Mason and I are expecting a child. We're happy, and so is Cody. He does have his bad days, but the excitement of having a grandchild is making him better. My business took off even more after I got numerous orders from the party. The recommendations brought in more orders. I have to say, Susan did me a favor. She removed herself from my life and boosted my business at the same time. Hello, I'm Sandra, a 42-year-old woman who has gone through a lot in life. Today, I want to share how I became a single mom when my kids were very young. I met my ex-husband, Harry, through mutual friends. We hit it off pretty well. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. Both of us had good jobs and were financially stable. Though I had no contact with my family, Harry's parents welcomed me with open arms. He checked all my boxes, so of course I said yes when he proposed after 3 years of dating. Harry was always open about his desire to start a family. I wasn't the biggest fan of having kids, but I wanted to make Harry happy, so I agreed. However, once my kids were born, I knew I had made the best decision of my life. Initially, Harry was an amazing father and husband. He took care of us, sometimes to the point of neglecting himself. I truly thought I had hit the jackpot with him. But then, out of the blue, a couple of years after we had both kids, things started going downhill. He had a new coworker join his team, and they began hanging out a lot. From the start, I did not like the look of his coworker. He seemed like a bad influence. My gut feeling was right because pretty soon, Harry was ignoring me and the kids. He would come home from work and lock himself in his room to play games. I tried talking to him repeatedly, but he never listened. We would have heated arguments when the kids weren't around. He complained about me pushing too many responsibilities on him and being a nag. The thing is, I wasn't asking him to go above and beyond. I just wanted him to do something, considering he was doing absolutely nothing at that moment. One day, Harry asked if he could take the kids to the park while I was at work. He had a day off and wanted to bond with them. I was filled with so much joy at the prospect of Harry returning to his old self that I readily agreed, not thinking about my kids skipping school. While I was at work, my father-in-law, Dave, called me. It wasn't unusual for him to call and check in, so I happily picked up, but he sounded upset. "Sandra, are you at work?" he asked. "Yeah, is everything all right? You sound upset," I replied. "Well, Maria and I were on our way back home from the grocery store when we saw the kids at the park." "Oh yeah, Harry said he'd be taking them there." They were alone. Lacey was crying, and Jax was trying his best to calm her down. "What? Oh my God, are they okay?" "Yeah, we picked them up, and they're sleeping right now." "Do you know where Harry is or how long they were there?" Jax said Harry had taken them to the park around 10 in the morning, and we picked them up around 12. Apparently, Harry had dropped them off at the park and just left. "That man is going to get a piece of my mind," I said, seething with anger. "If you manage to get through to him, let him know that his parents also want to have a stern word with him," Dave added. "You haven't been able to get through to him?" "Nope, his phone is switched off." "Okay, I'll try to get a hold of him too. Until then, I hope it won't be an issue to watch over the kids until I get back." "Of course not, honey. We'll make sure they eat when they wake up." "Thanks a lot. I don't know what I would do without you two." I managed to stay kind and grateful even though I was raging inside. Once I was off the phone with Dave, I immediately dialed Harry. Just like Dave said, Harry's phone was switched off. I don't know how I managed to get through the rest of my workday. I kept making phone calls to Harry, but never got a response. Once I was done with work, I decided to go home first. I hoped that Harry was just at home playing some games. I know it's pathetic, but I still hoped he had only left the kids in the park to play his stupid games. I called Dave and informed him about my plan, and he assured me it was all right. I didn't want my kids to see me getting angry at Harry if he was actually at home. Harry and I had been struggling for a while, but I didn't want my kids to think the toxic aspects of our relationship were normal. When I got back home, I immediately noticed something was different. The house felt emptier. I had a sinking feeling in my chest as I ran through the house, yelling for Harry, but he was nowhere to be found. With each room I checked, my panic grew. When I didn't see him, I went down to his den in the basement and saw it was completely cleared out. That's when I felt a full-blown panic attack coming on. Harry had an elaborate gaming setup, and I knew he wouldn't have moved it anywhere else in the house because we didn't have the space. I carefully walked up the stairs, feeling myself slowly losing my breath. When I got to our bedroom, I noticed all his clothes that had been piled in a corner of the room were gone. I went through his nightstand, and it was empty. Our shared wardrobe was also empty. The bathroom had been cleared of all his products. None of his things were there. He had left us. I was struggling to breathe. How was I supposed to raise 2 kids on my own? How would I survive on my income alone? If I had to pick up another job, I would have no time to spend with my kids. In my panic, I kept calling Harry. At that point, I didn't care about my dignity or ego. I was ready to beg Harry on my knees to come back. But of course, none of my calls went through, and my messages didn't either. I must have been blocked. With nothing else to do, I managed to calm myself down enough to make my way back to my car. I hoped Dave had been able to get a hold of Harry. My heart raced faster as I got closer to Dave and Maria's house. I knew I had to put on a brave face in front of the kids. My kids greeted me at the front door. I hugged them and did a quick once-over to check if they were okay. They looked happy and fine, and I felt a little relieved. They told me all about their day, and for a second, I forgot about my huge problem. Maria sensed my unease, so she had the kids leave the room to play in their playroom. She came back to the living room with a glass of water. Dave, Maria, and I sat on the couch and began to discuss everything that had happened. "Did you manage to talk to Harry?" Dave asked. "No, I don't know where he is, and I'm freaking out," I replied. "What's wrong?" "I went back home, and all his stuff is gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Gone as in there's no trace that he ever even lived in our home. All of his clothes, his toiletries, his gaming things, everything's just gone." "You think he left you?" "I hate that he's done this. I'm going to teach him a good lesson if he does come back." "That is not how I raised my son to behave," Dave said sternly. "Do you have any idea where he may be?" Maria asked. "Well, there are his friends' places and some of his usual haunts, but other than that, not really." "Okay, well, let's start by talking to his friends and then looking around the places he usually visits. If nothing turns up, we'll go to the police." I really did not want to get the police involved in this matter, so I tried calling everyone we knew. I even managed to find some of Harry's high school friends and asked if they had seen him around. Maria and Dave contacted their relatives and neighbors to find any information. We even went around the city looking for him. During this time, I had to juggle the kids and work. I was lucky enough to get a week off when I explained my situation to my boss. Dealing with my kids was a lot tougher. Every single day, they asked where their dad was, and I had no real answer to give them. I told them he was away on a business trip, and then they would ask when he'd be back. Thankfully, Dave and Maria had my back when it got too overwhelming to juggle everything. Eventually, we did get the police involved. However, they said they couldn't help because he left on his own accord, so he technically wasn't a missing person. Everything shattered at that moment. I didn't know how to proceed. Maria and Dave also seemed to be in a trance, just like I was. I felt so betrayed and abandoned. What happened to all of Harry and my promises? Our promise to stay together forever, to raise our kids to be great people, to go on a date every fourth Saturday of the month. I spent every night crying myself to sleep after that. I couldn't even face my kids because how could I tell them that their dad had run away from us and left us? Dave and Maria came over one night to check in on me. After I had put the kids to bed, I broke down crying in front of them. Before I knew it, the two of them were crying too. We just held each other for a little while until we stopped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cry this way," I said. "There's every reason to cry. You've lost a husband, and we've lost our son." "We get what you feel," Dave said. "Yes, that's why we keep coming over." "I guess somewhere inside we feel guilty for his behavior," Maria added. "You have absolutely no reason to feel any guilt. He was the one who made the decision to abandon us, and he's responsible for it," I reassured them. "Yeah, but maybe it was the way we brought him up that made him this way," Dave said. "Nonsense. I know you brought him up well because you are here right now. You could have also left us alone since your son is not here, but you've chosen to be here to take care of us and help me out," I insisted. "You're right, we can never leave you guys. Your family," Dave said. "Precisely, Sandra. I want you to remember that we're family. We want to help you and the kids out in any way possible. Don't hesitate to ask us, okay?" Maria said. "Of course," I replied. After that, we slowly grew out of the hurt and misery. I somehow managed to break the news to my kids about their father's abandonment. They seemed to have an inkling that their father was never coming back because they were eerily calm about it. They only asked if their grandparents and I were going to leave them too. I assured them we would never leave, and for the first time, I didn't feel upset at Harry. Instead, I felt rage towards him. He had shown my kids what abandonment felt like, and now they were going to be cautious about it for a while. But my in-laws and I tried our hardest to do only the best for them and show them that we were never going anywhere. The kids continued to thrive, and I began to see them returning to their happy, bubbly selves. Around 5 years into Harry's disappearance, I stopped checking up on him. I had been religiously trying to contact him until then, but one day I realized just how long 5 years was. Harry had missed a lot of firsts with his kids, and they had all but forgotten about him. I didn't see any reason to want him back. 10 years after Harry left us, things were going well for us. Jax got into his dream college with a full ride, and Lacey was acing all her classes. I was earning enough for us to live more than comfortably. Maria and Dave were practically living with us because they were getting older, and we didn't want them to be on their own. They were struggling with their health, their bones hurt, and they had issues with their blood and sugar levels. I dreaded the thought of losing one of them. They had been my rock during the hardest times, and I wanted them to enjoy the good times with us. It took years for all of us to adjust to our new lives, and I wanted them to enjoy it to the fullest. It was no real surprise when Dave got very ill. Maria and I took turns staying at the hospital when Dave slipped into a coma. It was a hard time for all of us. For a long while, there was no laughter or smiles in our home. However, things changed when Dave finally woke up. Though he was still very weak and sick, he was alive. When we were told that despite being awake, he still didn't have much time left, the entire family spent time with him at the hospital. Dave made peace with the fact that he wasn't going to be around much longer. He uplifted the mood somehow, even though he was very weak. He insisted on having his lawyer come so he could rearrange his affairs and rewrite his will. When a lawyer was in the room, none of us were allowed in. "I'm sorry I couldn't let you guys in," Dave said weakly. "Oh dear, it's okay, just get your rest," Maria replied. "I just wanted to surprise you guys." "That's awfully sweet of you to think about a surprise for us right now, Dave." "Of course, you know how much I love surprises." "We really don't want this surprise for a while though, dear," Maria said gently. "At least this way, there will be something to look forward to. I just have one condition for you." "What is it?" I asked. "You have to stick to what's written in the will. Promise me that no matter what happens, my estate will remain divided the way I've arranged it." "Of course, dear. I promise everything will be as you wanted it to be." About 2 weeks after he woke up, Dave passed away in his sleep. I was a mess. He was like a father to me, the only man in my life who was there for me and helped me learn and grow. He was also a father figure to my kids and greatly helped me raise them. Maria and the kids were devastated too. We all lost someone very dear to our hearts. I took the initiative to handle all the paperwork and funeral services because I knew Maria didn't have the strength for it. The funeral took place 3 days after he passed away. A lot of people attended, and it felt good to see that Dave was loved by so many. At that moment, I did feel a pang of anger. I was sure that Harry must have found out that his dad had passed away. I even had Dave's obituary published in the newspaper, but he still never showed up for the funeral. Then again, if Harry did show up, I didn't know how I would have reacted. Perhaps it was better that only the people who truly loved and cared for Dave were there. The next few days after the funeral were spent grieving some more. During this time, we also got access to Dave's will. We were pleasantly surprised by it. Dave had divided his estate between the 4 of us, giving a lot more to the kids, which I was super grateful for because they needed it more than Maria and I. However, he had also left something for Harry, a letter. I was desperately wanting to open it and read it, but I knew it would be a violation of Dave's wishes as he had made it explicitly clear that only Harry was to read the letter. I wish I could say that I wasn't surprised when Harry showed up, but I really was. Thankfully, Jax had gone back to university and Lacey had been away at school when Harry appeared. When I saw his face, I was filled with rage. Maria felt the same. He looked barely alive, malnourished, with bones jutting out and eyes huge on his now small face. He had a lot of muscle before, but now his arms and legs looked like twigs. His voice was raspy and his eyes were bloodshot. I had a very strong feeling that he must have spent the last few years abusing substances. "My name is Kate, and I live with my husband, Michael. We inherited a restaurant, Sunflower, from my grandfather, who had run it for many years. Sunflower was beloved by locals and had many regular customers. Despite battling cancer, my grandfather remained an active owner. 'I can't be resting in a hospital room,' he would say. 'I should be out in Sunflower, working till my very last day.' Even as his condition worsened, he never showed signs of weakness and continued to serve delicious food with a smile, enjoying conversations with his regulars. Today, my grandfather passed away with his family watching over him. He named me, his granddaughter, as the heir to Sunflower. He knew his time was coming and left behind a precise will detailing the restaurant's inheritance. I decided to follow in his footsteps and become the owner of Sunflower. Thankfully, even after his passing, Our loyal customers continued to visit, and the employees who had worked with my grandfather stayed on. Having watched and practiced my grandfather's cooking style all my life, I was confident I could serve the same delicious food. Our regular customers were happy that they could still enjoy my grandfather's cooking. "Wow, it tastes just like your grandfather's. Even though he's gone, it feels like he's still here with us," they would say. This motivated me even more as Sunflower continued to thrive. However, Michael grew increasingly dissatisfied after my grandfather's death. "Restaurant owners should be men. Why should you inherit it?" he asked. "Because I am his granddaughter," I replied. "Even though I own the restaurant, you'll be running it with me, so it shouldn't matter." "Yeah, but," Michael sometimes complained, wanting to be the owner. However, I was the top chef, and even when my grandfather was alive, my husband mainly handled shopping for recipes but never cooked. "I've never heard of a restaurant owner who can't cook," I said. I felt strongly about honoring my grandfather's wishes and will. "Kate, can I have another one of this?" a customer asked. "Sure, coming right up," I responded. The restaurant continued to thrive, and we were busy every day. Then one day, someone came to visit. "Hey, Michael, it's been a long time," said his younger brother, Dave, who was quite irresponsible. He never held a regular job and had moved away last year only to quit and return. "Oh hey, welcome back," Michael said, happy to see his brother. "I heard your grandfather died. Did you inherit the restaurant?" Dave asked. "No, I didn't inherit the restaurant," Michael replied. "What? Did your wife inherit it?" "No way, she's a woman. Becoming the owner is a joke," Dave laughed, oblivious to the annoyed stares of the customers. Ignoring my brother-in-law's comments, I continued working. "Since I'm family, can I have it on the house?" Dave asked. "Yo, sure," Michael said. Dave ate a large meal, drank beer, and left without paying. "Hey, even other family members pay when they eat here. It's not fair to others, so please make him pay if he's going to eat at our restaurant," I told Michael. "He doesn't have any money. We should support him a little bit," Michael replied. After that, Dave continued to eat and drink at the restaurant regularly without paying. Each time, I insisted he pay, but Michael never listened. My persistence annoyed my husband, and we eventually stopped talking to each other. Dave started coming to the restaurant more often while my husband and I grew increasingly distant. Every time my brother-in-law visited, he and Michael would retreat to the kitchen to talk in secret. I suspected they were talking behind my back, but I pretended not to care and continued cooking and serving our customers. One day, I overheard Dave asking Michael, "Is there any way you can own this restaurant?" "My wife is the owner," Michael replied. "Since this place has a great location and many customers, why don't you take over the restaurant and keep all the profits? It must be hard having your wife as your boss, right?" "Well, yeah," Michael admitted. Dave had his eye on Sunflower and was scheming to take it over. Sensing Michael's frustration with me, he tried to get him on board with his plan. "But how could we make the restaurant ours?" Michael asked. "I have an idea," Dave said. Michael agreed to Dave's idea and decided to go through with it. The next day, which was our restaurant's closed day, my husband left early, and I spent the day alone. Even though it was my day off, I remembered that the kitchen needed some cleaning, so I decided to use my day off to tidy up the restaurant. When I arrived, I found the door already open. I thought I had forgotten to lock it the previous night and hurried inside, only to find Michael and Dave already there. "You're here," Michael said, smirking. The door was open, so I was surprised. I replied, "Today is a closed day. Why are you here?" They both smirked as if they were planning something. "I have something to tell you," Michael began. "Since you inherited this restaurant, I don't like the way you've been acting all stuck up." I was not being stuck up, I protested. "Yes, you have been," Dave chimed in. "Don't you think so?" "Yes, you're being stuck up since the restaurant is thriving and you're making profits. You're feeling good about it," Michael agreed. "What are you saying?" I was getting annoyed and angry as they talked to me as if I were an idiot. While I was fuming, Michael pulled out some documents from his bag. "I don't like your attitude. I can't take it anymore. Let's get a divorce." The documents were already filled out divorce papers. I was astonished. "What do you mean by this?" I was upset and couldn't understand what my husband was talking about. The first thing that came to my mind was the continuation of the restaurant. "It will be hard for me to continue as an owner if we get a divorce," I said. "About that, Michael replied. "We will buy the restaurant from you. Dave and I will run it. You just leave." I couldn't understand what my husband was saying. "It's such a waste since this restaurant has a great location and many customers. We will renew it with a better menu." "Yup, so just fill out the divorce papers and get out," Dave added. Their words made my brain freeze. This is the restaurant my grandfather owned for so long. We have enough profit from it. We should continue as it is for our customers. That means you're not going to change or improve it. This restaurant will go out of business soon, Michael argued. We don't want that. We'll run it. No matter what I said, they didn't listen. I was sure Michael was brainwashed by Dave. "Okay, I will sell this restaurant for your named price. I'll make that money soon anyway, so I don't care how much." I couldn't stand their arrogance. "Fine then. I will sell it for $500,000. Just give me 2 weeks to prepare the divorce papers and the contract. Don't visit the restaurant during those 2 weeks." With that, I agreed to sell them the restaurant. Dave and Michael were overjoyed. They had no idea why I sold the restaurant to them so easily, focusing only on their potential profits and selfish ambitions. I continued running the restaurant until a handover. "Hey, where's your husband?" a regular customer asked. "We're getting a divorce," I replied. "Why so sudden? Are you going to run Sunflower all on your own?" "No, my husband will be buying the restaurant from me. I'll be quitting in 2 weeks." The customers were surprised and worried, but I reassured them with some good news. I handed out flyers I had recently made, and the customers looked relieved after reading them. 2 weeks later, I presented Michael and Dave with a contract to sell the restaurant and the filled-out divorce papers. "Now you have nothing to complain about," I said. Michael signed the contract without hesitation. $500,000. "I'm transferring the money to your account now. So this is my restaurant now," he declared, overjoyed with Dave. While they celebrated, I packed up my belongings and left the restaurant. On my way to submit the divorce papers, I couldn't wait to see what they would do with the restaurant. Michael and Dave opened the restaurant immediately. I've already explained the situation to the employees, so there shouldn't be any problem running the restaurant without Kate, Michael assured Dave. "All right, let's make some money," Dave said enthusiastically. At 10 a.m., when the restaurant opened, an unusual scene unfolded. "Why aren't the customers coming?" Michael wondered. Typically, customers would arrive as soon as the restaurant opened, but no one showed up. Even the diligent employees didn't come to work. Michael tried calling them but couldn't get through. Panic set in as this had never happened before. Michael spotted a regular customer walking by. "Aren't you our regular customer?" he called out. "Huh? Oh yeah," the customer replied. "I was worried because you didn't show up when the restaurant opened." Come in, come in. "I heard your wife quit. I was a regular because I wanted to eat her food. Since she's not here, there's no reason for me to come and eat here." "Don't say that. We can serve you a delicious meal," Michael insisted, half forcibly pushing the customer inside. The customer reluctantly entered and looked at the new menu. "What is this menu?" "I've renewed all the dishes," Michael announced proudly. The menu had none of Sunflower's original offerings. Instead, it featured exotic words that confused the customers, making them less excited to order. "Fine, I'll have the steak," the customer said. "Coming right up," Michael replied, cooking with great enthusiasm. The customer, who had never seen Michael cook, wasn't looking forward to the meal. What is taking so long?" After a 40-minute wait, the dish was finally served. The customer's eyes widened in disbelief. "What is this?" What Michael served was not cooking. 3 slices of meat were placed in the center of the plate, burnt on the outside and raw inside. There was no sauce or side dishes, just bread and soup. Since the quality of the meat is fine, the seasoning is only salt and pepper. The meat is cooked to enjoy its savoriness and rareness, Michael explained. The customer couldn't even pick up the cutlery. The steak looked unappealing and the soup seemed cheap. I'm not going to eat this," the customer said, standing up to leave. Michael was in shock. "Hey, you're going to pay for this. It'll be $30. $30? Are you joking? I am not going to pay for this piece of __." The customer left furiously. Michael and Dave were just in shock. Slowly, they began to realize their mistakes. Michael, who never cooked, and Dave, who never had a proper job, couldn't run a restaurant. Their focus on profit blinded them to the obvious. Sunflower, under the new owners, never saw another customer again. Meanwhile, I started a new restaurant in a different location called Sunflower Second. The original employees joined me. This restaurant was also inherited from my grandfather, who had anticipated the need for continuity as the old building aged. So he had set up a new restaurant in a different location, ensuring the legacy of Sunflower lived on. My grandfather wanted to announce the new restaurant after it was built, but he passed away during its construction. This new restaurant was also inherited by me, and I never told my husband about its existence. 2 weeks before selling the original Sunflower, I advertised the new restaurant to our regular customers, who came because they loved my cooking. Thanks to their support, the restaurant was bustling from day one. We quickly earned enough to hire new employees, and the $500,000 from selling the original Sunflower allowed me to give my staff raises. At Sunflower Second, I kept my grandfather's original menu but added my own dishes to attract a younger crowd and make the menu more family-friendly. This strategy was a success, and more families visited the restaurant. Every day was busy and fulfilling. Meanwhile, Michael and Dave were struggling. They had borrowed $500,000 to pay me and were now receiving debt reminders. "What are we going to do about this?" Michael asked, frustrated. "You started this, you should fix it," Dave retorted, caught off guard by their situation. Dave suddenly had an idea. They came to my restaurant during the busy lunchtime. "Help us, Kate," Dave shouted, disregarding the many customers dining. Michael had a visible injury on his arm. "We will return the restaurant to you. Just give us back the money we paid for it," Dave pleaded. "The original Sunflower is yours now. You signed the contract, so take responsibility and work hard," I replied, not taking Dave's words seriously and returning to the kitchen. Then my ex-husband entered, looking pained. "Kate, help me," he pleaded dramatically. Customers murmured, concerned about Michael's visible bruise. I looked closer and was shocked by the large bruise on his arm. "Wait, you're really injured?" I asked. "Yes, that's what I've been trying to tell you," Michael responded. "Go to the hospital right away," I urged, calling a cab for him. During my lunch break, I visited the hospital to check on him. But when I arrived, Michael and Dave ran away as soon as they saw me. Suspicious, I asked the receptionist about Michael's visit. "I think a man named Michael was here a few minutes ago for an examination. Is he finished? I'm here to pick him up," I inquired. "There's no record of a man named Michael here," the receptionist replied, puzzled. Realizing they were hiding something, I drove around and found Michael and Dave walking. I stopped the car and grabbed Michael's arm. The bruise was gone. "You're not injured, are you?" I demanded. "No, I didn't know running a restaurant could be this difficult. We have no customers, no money, and can't pay off the debt. I thought if I pretended to be injured, you'd give us the money back," Michael admitted. "I can't believe you tried to deceive me with such a childish lie," I said, letting go of his hand. "Stay out of my life. That restaurant is yours. Deal with it." I got in the car and returned to my restaurant, feeling disappointed as I drove away. Michael and Dave put Sunflower on the market to pay off their debt, but the old building made it hard to find a buyer. They worked tirelessly, receiving constant debt reminders, a fitting consequence for their selfish greed. As for me, Sunflower Second thrived, with profits doubling. A regular customer who had admired my work asked to be my apprentice. Determined to teach them the hard work and dedication required to run a restaurant, I ensured they would not become selfish and greedy like Michael. I continued to work hard, honoring my grandfather's legacy, ensuring Sunflower Second remained successful for many years to come. As the train was leaving, my daughter waved at me with a big smile on her face. It had been about 2 months since she last saw my husband, and she was eagerly looking forward to visiting him. As soon as she boarded the train, I sent a message to my husband. About 4 hours after I got home, my daughter called me. I had told her to call when she arrived, so I assumed it was her checking in. "Hello, Sarah. Did you make it to San Francisco and meet up with your father?" I asked. Her response, in an unhappy voice, caught me off guard. "Mom, come and pick me up, please." "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. "I didn't get to meet Dad." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but I haven't heard from him. When I went to his house, some strange woman turned me away." "What?" "My name is Liddy. I have a family of 3 with my husband, Robert, and our 11-year-old daughter, Sarah. I conceived my husband's child while I was still in college, so I'm 32 years old now. After our baby was born, I managed to finish college with my parents' support. Since then, I have been a housewife. The unexpected pregnancy and early marriage caused confusion and concern among those around us, making it a difficult time. However, my husband assured me that he had always planned to marry me and it was just a matter of time. After graduating, my husband got a job at a well-known company. With a good starting salary and company housing, we didn't struggle financially and lived happily together. We didn't have a traditional honeymoon phase, but our daughter was so precious that it didn't matter. My husband adored her and always took care of her on weekends, allowing me to relax and spend time with friends. Life was good, and I had no complaints. Time flew by, and soon our daughter started elementary school. By then, my husband had been working for the same company for about 7 years and had been promoted. Although he had more responsibilities and came home later, we still enjoyed family road trips on weekends and created many happy memories. I believed these joyful times would continue for a long time. However, one day, my husband's company decided to transfer him. Despite having a family, our daughter was already 11 years old, and he could no longer refuse the transfer due to her age. Moreover, this new assignment was crucial for his career, and his future promotions depended on it. Since the company had many replacements for him, this relocation was unavoidable for his advancement. With our daughter soon entering junior high and high school and the expenses that come with it, I had to support his transfer for his career growth. The assignment was supposed to last about 6 months, which seemed manageable. However, my daughter was worried about being away from her father. My husband reassured her that he would call every day and visit on weekends to keep her from feeling lonely. Even though she was sad about not seeing her dad as often, my daughter accepted it. We saw him off with smiles, and a few days later, he called us on video, spending a lot of time talking with our daughter. He made sure to call before she even missed him, leaving me to wonder which one of them was the child. Seeing my husband and daughter talking on the phone is so heartwarming. I could tell they were getting along well with each other. On the first weekend, he was too busy to come home, but the next week, he made time and came back on a Friday. I'm grateful to my husband for prioritizing our family amidst his hard work. My daughter was thrilled to have dinner with her father after so long. However, about 2 months after his new life started, his behavior began to change. He used to call our daughter every 3 days, but the frequency of these calls decreased until he stopped calling altogether. I knew he was busy with work, living alone, and handling all the house chores. I assumed once he got used to the new workplace, he'd have more chances to go out for drinks with his colleagues. I didn't want to pressure him, so I didn't urge him to contact us. Despite understanding his busy schedule, my husband rarely contacted me anymore. He also visited less frequently. I explained to my daughter that her father was busy, but I could see she was grieving, even if she didn't express it. This wasn't a good situation. Knowing he was swamped with work, I asked my husband to call her, even if just for 5 minutes. Our daughter always seemed somewhat lonely at home. My husband apologized but didn't call Sarah. Her birthday was coming up on Saturday. I hoped he would come home to surprise us. She also hoped, saying, "Maybe Daddy will come home." But on her birthday, my husband didn't come home, nor did he call to wish her a happy birthday. My daughter was deeply disappointed. Furious, I called my husband several times and left messages. Lately, he hadn't been picking up my calls or returning them. After about the 5th call, he finally answered. "What's wrong?" "You've been calling a lot," he said. "What are you doing? It was Sarah's birthday today. It's Saturday and you didn't come home or even call to wish her a happy birthday." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that. Sarah hadn't seen you in a long time. She was expecting you for her birthday. Tell her I'm really sorry and that I wish her a happy birthday." No matter what I said, he just apologized. Frustrated, I hung up. As I did, my anger flared up again. I sent him a message. "Please think about your daughter and take better care of her. You may be busy, but you are being too disrespectful." His only response was, "I understand." "I'm sorry." There was no improvement after that. Another month passed, and my daughter went on summer vacation. She told me that if her father couldn't come, she would go to meet him. She had been saying this every day since summer vacation started. I decided to take the opportunity and let her visit my husband alone. She was enthusiastic about experiencing something new. We live in Los Angeles, and my husband is currently in San Francisco. She could get there by train. I would drive her to the station and my husband would pick her up at the other end. My husband agreed to the plan. Now my daughter could finally see her father for the first time in a long while. On Saturday, I saw her off and went home. She waved at me with a big smile as the train was leaving. It had been 2 months since she last saw her father, so she must have been really looking forward to it. I sent a message to my husband just as my daughter got on the train. About 4 hours after I got home, I received a call from my daughter. It was around noon, and she had boarded the train early in the morning. She must have met up with my husband and had lunch before calling me. I had told her to call me when she arrived, so I assumed she was checking in. "Hello, Sarah. Did you make it to San Francisco and meet up with your father?" To my surprise, she responded in an unhappy voice, "Mom, pick me up right now, please." "What? What's wrong?" "I didn't see Daddy." "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but I haven't heard from him. When I went to his house, some strange woman turned me away." "What?" I was in shock but knew I had to pick up my daughter as soon as possible. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm back at San Francisco Station. I'm going into a fast food restaurant to wait." I got into the car and headed for the station, quickly buying a ticket and boarding the next train to San Francisco. When I finally arrived, my daughter looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. We went to a nearby cafe, and to lift her spirits, I ordered the famous pancakes from the area. Her face lit up a little when the pancakes arrived, and she seemed to enjoy them, looking a bit calmer. Then, I asked her what happened. According to her, she couldn't reach my husband when she arrived at the San Francisco station. After waiting for about 30 minutes with no sign of him, she decided to take matters into her own hands and go to his house by herself. I had given her my husband's address in case something like this happened. Being a Gen Z girl, she used her smartphone to navigate there quickly. She got on the train and went to my husband's house. When she rang the doorbell, a woman's voice answered, "Who are you?" My daughter, surprised but managing to respond, said, "I'm here to see my dad." The woman told my daughter to go home and not to see her dad because she was in the way. She hung up without even opening the door. My daughter then went back to the San Francisco station, feeling dejected. Hearing this, I was so angry that I couldn't contain myself. "If she told you not to see your daddy, then let's do that," I said, taking my daughter home and immediately starting preparations to move out. When I explained the situation to my parents, they were furious and offered to help in any way they could. For the time being, they let us temporarily live with them until I could find a job. My husband called and said, "I didn't see Sarah at the station. Did something happen?" It seemed his adulterous woman hadn't told him that she had turned his daughter away. Since there was no word from my husband on my daughter's phone when I went to pick her up, I doubted he even went to the station. Dumbfounded, I decided to let it slide. "Sarah got sick on the way there and had to turn around," I replied. "I just finished at the hospital, and I'm sorry I couldn't call you." "I see, I understand," he responded. I ended the exchange by saying I would call again if anything else happened. I was pissed off because it was so obvious he was just pretending to be worried about us. I decided to focus on punishing my husband. First, I sent his belongings to his address. Then, I received the results of the investigation I had ordered from the detective agency. I sent proof of his affair along with a certified letter to his workplace. A few days later, everything must have arrived because my husband called me like a demon. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Huh? I just thought I'd let you all know what you've been up to," I said. "You've got to be kidding me. We're in the middle of a big problem here." "Of course we are. That's what I was trying to do. And I can't believe you're sending me my belongings here. I don't need your stuff, and I don't pay rent anymore." "What?" "Sarah and I moved out of that apartment." "Oh, you left that rental apartment. When did you leave?" "About a month ago." "What?" "Then no one lived there for a month, and we still had to pay the rent." "Well, that's true, but it's in your name, so it's none of my business." "No. You're about to be 2 months behind on your rent and get evicted. Is that why I've been getting calls from an unknown number lately? We'll be in trouble if we lose that apartment. Why don't we just continue to live in San Francisco?" "You sent a certified letter to the company. I'm in big trouble because they found out about my affair. They're going to call a replacement from headquarters and move me back to Los Angeles. If you send me all this stuff, it will be hard for me to go back to Los Angeles, especially without a home there." I almost laughed because the plan worked better than I had anticipated. But then I calmed myself and said, "You've hurt Sarah and me so much that you're going to have to pay the price. And it's not over yet. I'm going to demand a divorce, alimony, and child support. Oh no, let's just go through the lawyers and get this over with, I said, hanging up the phone. After that, I hired a lawyer, and everything proceeded as I had declared. The divorce was finalized without incident, and alimony was claimed against my ex-husband and his mistress. I also asked for child support from my ex-husband. The unprecedented incident of my husband returning from a transfer because of his affair made him the target of laughter within the company. Female employees gave him mean looks, and he could no longer expect a promotion. But he couldn't quit because he had to pay alimony and child support. He must feel ashamed of himself. My daughter became disillusioned with her father, and when he apologized and said he wanted to see her, she refused. He really deserved it. I was able to find a job, and my daughter and I now live happily together in an apartment. I'm working hard to support her and watch her grow up. Hi guys, I'm Amy, an up-and-coming artist, and I'm 26 years old. My story begins in a small town in Colorado. I want to start off by talking about my wonderful Aunt Maureen. I had the incredible privilege of having her live right next door in a massive Victorian-style mansion. When my parents were at work, I would spend hours with her. She was a free-spirited artist, and those moments with her were magical. Aunt Maureen taught me so many things, from painting to embracing my creative side. Her home was like a treasure trove of art and culture, filled with paintings, sculptures, and books. As we both got older, Aunt Maureen and I became even closer. So when I was getting ready to tie the knot, I knew exactly who I wanted as my maid of honor. She taught me everything I know today, but the greatest gift she gave me was discovering my passion for art. Now Clay, my husband, is the kind of man who makes you believe in soulmates. He wasn't in the same college as me, but he used to drive 6 hours every weekend just to see me. It didn't take long for me to realize he was the one. He is everything I ever wanted in a partner. Caring, supportive, and endlessly patient. Our love story may sound like a fairy tale, but like any relationship, it comes with its share of complexities. This is where my mother-in-law, Jane, enters the picture. Jane is a force to be reckoned with in her professional life as a successful lawyer. On the flip side, she can be quite a character at family gatherings, and not always in a good way. Let's just say she has a personal vendetta against me. Once, she miraculously lost my dog at a park, sending me into full panic mode. Other times, she added real dairy milk to my milkshake, even though she knew I was lactose intolerant. But the most shocking betrayal was when she managed to put all my property under my husband's name. Yes, you read that right. It sounds crazy, but it happened. It all started with a very upsetting phone call from my mom. Hey Mom, it's been a while since we caught up. How's everything? Oh Amy, it's so good to hear your voice. There's something I need to talk to you about, and it's not the easiest news. Mom, you're starting to worry me. What's going on? It's about Aunt Maureen, sweetheart. She passed away recently. Aunt Maureen? Mom, please, this can't be true. I started crying. Yes, honey, as much as it pains me to say it, it's the truth. Oh, Mom, I can't believe it. When did this happen? It was just last night, Amy. Maureen had been battling an illness, a heart condition she hadn't told anyone about. Typical Maureen, she never wanted to trouble anyone. Well, she's at peace now. We're planning her funeral, and we'd really like you to be there. Of course, Mom, I wouldn't miss it for anything. Aunt Maureen was so important to me, and I want to pay my respects. That would mean a lot to her, sweetheart. The funeral will be held next weekend at the church she loves so much. Clay and I will be there. I told Clay about Aunt Maureen's passing, and he immediately said he would be there for the funeral. But here's the twist. Jane, his mom, had planned to visit us that week because she took time off work, and it coincided with the funeral. Clay suggested we take her along. Honestly, I was not too thrilled about it. Jane and I had our differences, and I was not sure how she would act at such an emotional event. Still, I reluctantly agreed, hoping she would be on her best behavior. The day of the funeral came, and Jane showed up dressed in black, just as we had asked her to. We all piled into the car for the 2-hour drive to the funeral location. Inside, I was feeling a lot of sadness and hoping that Jane would keep things calm. The church was filled with friends and family who had come to pay their respects to Aunt Maureen. During the funeral, I had to step up and deliver a eulogy for Aunt Maureen. It was a pretty emotional moment, to be honest. At the reception, while I was chatting with Jane and Clay, my mom walked up to me. It was the moment she told me something I was not prepared for. So, Amy, did Jane and Clay have a comfortable drive up here? Yeah, the drive was fine. That's good to know. Jane, Amy, there's something I need to tell you. We found out about Aunt Maureen's will the other day, and she left everything to you. Everything? What do you mean, Mom? I mean her 2 houses and $100,000 in her bank account. All of it goes to you, Amy. That's a lot. Wow, I can't believe it. I knew she loved me, but this is really a lot. Well, you were her only niece, and we were her only family. It's quite a generous amount she's left behind. How about we take a drive to the other side of town so you can get a better look at the property? It's on the outskirts, and she never used it. That way, you can decide what you want to do with it after seeing it up close. You're already familiar with the house she lived in. Yeah, that's a great idea. And the other place is the house I grew up in. It's not something I'll easily forget. Amy turns to Clay and Jane. Clay, Jane, would you be willing to come along with me? Of course, dear. We have no objections at all. No problem, babe. Later that evening, we all got into the car to go and see the property. This place is huge, Amy. It has so much potential. Indeed, but it does seem like it hasn't been maintained for a while, Jane pointed out. That's true. It will need some work to get it back in shape, I replied. You know what, guys? I've made my decision. I'm going to renovate this place and put it on the market. Meanwhile, I'll keep the other place. Aunt Maureen and I shared so many memories there, and I want to keep that connection alive. That sounds like a great plan, Clay agreed. We got back home really late that night, and Jane decided to stay over. The following day, over a cup of coffee, just before Jane was going to leave, she came up to me with an offer. Amy, I've been thinking, since I'm a lawyer and I deal with legal paperwork all the time, I can help you with the legalities of your Aunt Maureen's properties. Oh, really, Jane? Well, it is the least I can do. I know this inheritance is relatively straightforward, but dealing with multiple properties can get a bit complex. I'm familiar with all the ins and outs of this stuff. It would definitely make things easier. I would be happy to assist. I can ensure everything is in order, from transferring titles to handling any legal documentation that may be required. So if I have your permission, forward all the documents to me, and I will take care of everything. You might already be going through a hard time losing your aunt. Let me help you. Thank you, Jane. That takes a weight off my shoulders. Jane had pulled some pretty silly tricks on me in the past, but I couldn't deny that she was a damn good lawyer. After some thought, I decided to take her up on her offer to handle the paperwork. You know, Jane could be a bit, well, let's say difficult to deal with at times. Like any mother-in-law, she had her moments, but I honestly didn't think she could cause me any financial trouble. I mean, we're talking about legal stuff here, not meddling in my personal life, right? It was one of those situations where you weigh the benefits against the potential headaches. And let's face it, dealing with multiple properties and legalities can be a real headache. So I figured, why not let Jane put her legal expertise to good use? It might actually save me from a few migraines down the road. In just a couple of weeks, while I was busy with my art projects at home, Jane completely took over. She had me sign what felt like a million documents. She explained each one, making it all sound so straightforward. I trusted her. After all, she was a lawyer, and I thought she had my best interests at heart. Then came the day when I checked my bank account, and there it was, a total of $100,000. Aunt Maureen's generous gift. It was a life-changing amount, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of gratitude. I had plans for that money, renovations on Aunt Maureen's old house, preserving her memory, and maybe even some financial security for the future. With this sweet inheritance, I planned to open up my very own art gallery. It was going to be a tribute to her talent and a place where artists could shine. You know, they say you should always read the fine print before signing anything. Well, I wish I had taken that advice to heart. You see, when Jane had me sign all those documents, I just assumed they were routine legal stuff, and I trusted her implicitly. I never bothered to read them carefully. And that, my friends, turned out to be a big mistake. I was under the impression that I had become the rightful owner of Aunt Maureen's properties, and I kept the paperwork tucked away, completely oblivious to the details within. It was a classic case of naivety mixed with misplaced trust, and I couldn't help but blame myself for not being more vigilant. Fast forward a month, and I found myself in a situation where I needed those very documents. I had decided to sell Aunt Maureen's abandoned property to a builder named Jonathan. He was interested, and it seemed like a good opportunity to move forward with my plans. So one sunny afternoon, I pulled out the paperwork from where I had stashed it and took it along to meet Jonathan. I thought it was just a formality, a quick exchange of papers, and the deal would be sealed. "Amy, something does not seem right here," Jonathan said. "What do you mean, Jonathan?" "These documents, they do not exactly convey the ownership of the property to you." My heart sank as I glanced at the papers. I had never paid much attention to the legal jargon before, but now it seemed like everything was written in a foreign language. "What?" But Jane, my lawyer, assured me that I was the owner. "Well, Amy, it looks like you have had a misunderstanding with your lawyer. From what I'm seeing, this property clearly does not belong to you." "How is this possible?" "Jane," she promised. "I understand, Amy, but it looks like you'll need to consult a new lawyer to sort this out. I can't proceed with the purchase without clear ownership." "Wait, did you say the property belongs to someone else?" "Yes, it's listed here as the property of a Clay Carpenter." "Clay Carpenter, that's my husband." "Are you sure it says that?" 100%. My mind was racing as I hastily gathered my things and left the cafe, with Jonathan's words echoing in my head. The shock of discovering that the property did not belong to me but to my own husband, Clay Carpenter. How had this happened? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I dialed Clay and asked him to come home right away. "Clay, did you know that you were the owner of the property? I mean, Aunt Maureen's property?" "Yeah, I did. My mom told me there was some trouble putting it under your name, so she made me sign a couple of things. I thought you were aware of this." "Clay, I hate to jump to conclusions, but I think your mom lied to both of us." "What do you mean, Amy?" "Clay, your mom told me she was making me the owner of the house, and she told you a whole different story." "What? That can't be right. I had no idea about this." "Clay, something isn't adding up here. I trusted your mom, and I can't believe she'd deceive us like this." "This is messed up, Amy. I need to talk to my mom about this." Clay and I looked at each other, totally puzzled. Without wasting any more time, we hopped in the car and drove to her place, ready to get to the bottom of this crazy mess. "Jane, we need to talk. We found out about the property, and there's something you need to explain," Clay said as soon as we arrived. "What are you talking about, dear?" "Cut the act, Mom. We know you lied to both of us. You told me you were making me the owner of the house, and you told Clay that you were making him the owner and that I was okay with it. What is the truth here, Jane?" "Ah, you caught me there. Well, Amy, I did what I thought was best for my son. He deserves all of it. You see, Amy, I've never quite trusted you. You've always been a stay-at-home wife, never really contributing financially to this family. Painting those silly little art pieces doesn't really help you to run the house, does it? In my eyes, my son deserves all that property more than you do. I cannot put his future in your hands. I just can't trust you to handle it properly. Frankly, you've always been more of a burden than anything else, living off my son's hard work." "Mom, that is enough. Amy's my wife, and I will not let you insult her like this. She has supported me in every way she could, and that is more than anything," Clay retorted. "I'm a lawyer, Clay. At 55, I'm still taking on challenging projects and hustling in life. Look at Amy, she's nothing but a useless housewife, painting her life away like a 20-year-old. Mom, being a homemaker is as much of a struggle as being a lawyer. I have had enough of your lies, Jane. Just wait and watch. I'm going to sue you." "Sue me? With the knowledge and brain you have, I do not think you stand a chance." Little did Jane know that my dad was a judge. Talk about a twist she did not see coming, right? I had grown up in a family where justice and fairness were like our family mottos, so of course, I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. Now let's get one thing straight. Being a housewife is no excuse for anyone to steal your inheritance and pull all this shady stuff. Housewives, just like any other role, play a massive part in making a home, and their contributions are absolutely priceless. So it was beyond unjust for Jane to underestimate me based on my chosen role. There I was, hatching a plan with Clay. He was all in and knew his mom's tactics like the back of his hand. We were not going down without a fight. We decided to get our own lawyer, and with legal expertise on our side, we went full steam ahead, filing a lawsuit against Jane. Our case went to court, and let me tell you, that day is etched into my memory forever. It was one of those moments when you feel like your life is on the line and everything hangs in the balance. I had an honest conversation with my dad about the whole situation, and he reassured me that justice would prevail. Having a judge as a father was a real advantage in this ordeal. Jane, on the other hand, looked confident as ever. She probably thought her lawyer skills would save the day, but little did she know that justice does not bend to manipulation. Emmy, you have really outdone yourself this time, suing your own family. I guess you'll learn a lesson or two about the real world, Jane said smugly. Jane, this is not about lessons. It's about justice. Aunt Maureen's properties were meant for me, just me. I would have shared it with Clay and even you, but you did not even give me a chance. I'm a skilled lawyer, Amy. I know how to navigate these waters. You were just a housewife once. After this, you'll realize that you should have never gone against me. Just as she was talking down to me, my dad entered the room. What? What is he doing here? Is he the judge? Jane stammered. Yeah, Jane, that's my dad. He's the judge presiding over this case. You should have told me earlier. This changes everything. I didn't want you to feel intimidated. I didn't sign up for this. I thought I could win this without any issues. The courtroom showdown ended with Jane getting a 2-month timeout in jail for her tricky antics. Those were the most tension-free months we had in a long time. With a new lawyer by my side, I managed to secure ownership of Aunt Maureen's properties. We decided to sell one of the houses to a builder, knowing it was the smart move. It felt like a huge weight lifted off our shoulders. No more legal battles. No more deceit to worry about. Life moved forward and we breathed easier. Just a day ago, Jane walked out of jail, and the first thing she did was march up to me. She had to fork over a cool $20,000 as part of the fine from the lawsuit I won. Amy, I wanted to apologize for everything I did. I shouldn't have called you a boring housewife and all those terrible things. I was wrong, Jane said, looking defeated. Well, Jane, it's about time you realized it, but you see, those words don't come off easily. Amy, you don't understand. I lost my lawyer's license and now I'm jobless. I have no savings left and the fine you imposed on me. Oh, Jane, isn't it ironic? The mastermind lawyer now facing consequences herself. As for that fine, well, you'll just have to find a way to pay it, won't you? Please, Amy, I'm begging you. Can't you let me get away with the fine? I have nothing left. Sorry, Jane, no shortcuts to redemption here. Knocking at my door, Jane found herself with her own set of issues. She's no longer a lawyer, and her son Clay isn't exactly rushing to her side. Consequences have a funny way of coming back to bite you, and it seems like they've caught up with her. She eventually paid us the money, which we honestly didn't need, and now we have completely shut her out of our lives. I hope she learned a major lesson. Respect every hustle out there and treat everyone right. Don't let your ego get too inflated. The higher you soar, the nastier the fall when you come crashing down. Now I'm the proud owner of some prime property and a nice chunk of cash. It's like a world of opportunities just busted open for me. I've got this killer plan to open up a gallery for myself, and the first art show was going to showcase all of Aunt Maureen's incredible art. Her creative genius deserves to be seen by the world, and I'm going to make it happen with that sweet inheritance money. Art lovers, get ready to be wowed. I was at rock bottom after my wife left me. It was a sweet woman with dimples who rescued me when I was questioning my own purpose in life. At that time, I never imagined our relationship would turn out this way. My name's Logan. After graduating from college, I landed a job at a top-tier company. Typically, new employees would be assigned to a branch office near the headquarters after their training period, but I was assigned directly to the headquarters. The job was rigorous. Only good results were acceptable. Determined not to fall behind my seniors, I strived hard and rapidly improved my skills. I graduated from a prestigious university, always loved studying, and aimed for the top. Perhaps it was sheer luck that brought me this far. However, these two qualifications seemed to naturally boost my image. I'm fairly tall but have a pretty average appearance. Fashion isn't exactly my strong suit, but thanks to my credentials, I often got approached by women. My 20s went by in a whirlwind, with both work and personal life keeping me on my toes. After working at the company for several years, I was 30. Professionally, I didn't have any official title yet, but I felt I was on the brink of becoming a supervisor. On the personal front, I started dating someone a friend introduced during a night out, and just last year, we tied the knot. We moved into a reasonably spacious and stylish apartment with a great view, and we're thoroughly enjoying our new leave life. With my salary, we were comfortable and considering our plans to have children. Due to the physical toll and future considerations, my wife chose to be a full-time housewife. Things at work were going smoothly, and every day I would return to a home where my wife was eagerly waiting. Everything seemed to be sailing smoothly, at least up to this point. Then, one day, a transfer notice came in. The new location was a rural branch office, quite the contrast from the bustling city I was accustomed to. The notice did mention supervisor, so it was undeniably a promotion. But having assumed I'd stay at the headquarters, I was visibly shaken. I headed home and broke the news to my wife, but there was no joy in the promotion for me. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Why such a countryside? What's going on?" I was told by HR that they needed my skills at the new location. Even after relaying this to my wife, she seemed far from convinced. Moreover, the new place would require a move. While my wife was struggling to come to terms with it all, we didn't have much time before the move. So we started looking for a new place to live and went for some viewings. Throughout the day, as we visited multiple places, seeing the town and the buildings, which looked like shabby apartments if we were in the city, her mood progressively soured. On a whim, we drove by the new branch office. The sight of its worn-out walls against the backdrop of a fading town wasn't encouraging. She was speechless, just staring at this place she couldn't accept. The continuous unsettling events and our differing views couldn't align. We ended the day with just the viewings. Once we got home, discussions turned into arguments. Sure, it's labeled as a promotion, but isn't this just a demotion in disguise? If you work there, you'll never get a promotion or raise. We could be living below our means for the rest of our lives, my wife complained in tears. Our discussions reached a deadlock, and before we knew it, moving day arrived. We decided to keep our electronic appliances in the city apartment for now. I took only my belongings and moved into the new apartment alone for the time being. The plan was for my wife to visit during weekends to see how things played out. However, after several weeks, she still hadn't made peace with the situation, saying, "I can't live here. I can't have the life I want with a husband working in a branch office with a dubious chance at a raise. I don't want it." After being told that by my wife, we ended up divorcing. I guess it was inevitable. Time for a fresh start and to focus on my job. That was my mindset. But the weight of the word divorce hit hard. Often at work, my hands would stop and my thoughts would spiral. I remembered how homely my ex-wife was, how she always kept the house clean and had delicious meals waiting for me. Just hearing her cheerful welcome home would wash all the fatigue away. I thought I'd be fine living alone. But with the divorce, it's lonely and tough. Can't live the ideal life in the countryside. What was my worth after all? I sighed loudly, even though I was at work. Seeing my distress, some colleagues, feeling sorry for me, invited me out for drinks. "You're much more approachable than the previous supervisor. You're doing so well for someone so young. You're sharp and precise, just like when you were at the headquarters." Even some older colleagues were present, and they all refrained from bringing up the divorce, instead encouraging and praising me. With that warmth, I was re-energized. Time has a way of healing things. After a while, I became accustomed to my new life here and dedicated myself to the responsibilities at hand. Around that time, our branch was scheduled for an occasional inspection. "Logan, long time no see. I'll be here for the week, so let's work well together." Hearing that familiar voice and turning around, I was met by Sarah, a former colleague from the headquarters. Though Sarah is younger than me, her fearless determination is well recognized, making her an adept career woman, especially in the field of inspections. She has the demanding task of traveling to branches nationwide, constantly on the move. Still, Sarah never complains and takes on her duties with unwavering stamina. I've always held her in high regard. "Sarah, have you been well?" I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. My voice grew louder with happiness. "Oh, my apologies, I should address you as Miss Connor here, right?" Given our current positions, Sarah now held a higher position than I did. After straightening up, I greeted her again, to which she replied with a playful chuckle. "Don't be so formal." She then nudged me with her elbow just like she used to. When Sarah laughs, adorable dimples form on her cheeks. When it comes to inspections, everyone tends to get a bit tense, but thanks to Sarah's charming demeanor, the atmosphere always settles into a comfortable state, allowing everyone to work as usual. It's quite remarkable. That night, I decided to go out to dinner with Sarah. She was staying at a hotel nearby, and since she was planning on dining out, she asked for restaurant recommendations. Even though it was just the two of us having a meal, our conversation was mostly about work. In such a relaxed setting, we could discuss matters we wouldn't have time for at the office, making the time fly by fruitfully. As our meal and conversation neared their end, I noticed Sarah glancing at her watch. "I'm sorry, we've been here quite a while, haven't we? We should probably head out. Your wife might be getting worried," said Sarah as she began to prepare to leave. Seeing the look on my face, she tilted her head in confusion. Well, the thing is, I then shared with her that I had gotten divorced. I went into the reasons as well, and as I spoke, Sarah listened attentively, nodding from time to time. She then casually remarked, "You know, with your capabilities, I'd expect you to be back at the main office soon." Surprised by her candid statement, I asked, "What do you mean?" Sarah responded, "It's probably a temporary placement. Once you've turned this branch around, I bet they'll want you back at headquarters." Her tone made it sound like a given. I was curious about where she had gotten such information. Sarah chuckled and said, "Don't underestimate a woman's network." I was all ears, completely absorbed in the conversation. The distance from the city hustle, the divorce, and even though my duties might have been lighter than at the headquarters, perhaps my spirits had been down without me realizing. I had perhaps underestimated myself. Seeing this, Sarah laughed and said, "Do you even realize how talented you are? Your skills are well known at the headquarters. And of course, I'm aware too." She ended on her usual cheerful note, "You better keep up the good work," and gave me a pat on the shoulder. The pain lingered, but it rekindled my spirit completely. I'll return to the main office someday. With that resolve, I worked even harder. Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was 35. "Thank you, sir," one colleague said. "I'll miss you. I hope to be just like you someday." I received a large bouquet and shook hands with everyone in my department. I worked exceptionally hard as a supervisor, leading our team to great success. I also mentored my successor, who then moved up to a managerial position. In recognition of my accomplishments, I have now returned to work at the headquarters. Even though I was returning to the same department as before, I got a promotion. I'd be joining as a department head. The bustling city atmosphere felt familiar. While the air quality was so-so, I've always loved the vibrant energy of the city. I took a few days off to handle my move and settle down before officially starting at the main office. My colleagues at the headquarters, knowing it would be hard to coordinate once I got busy, decided to throw me a welcome back party during this break. They booked the city's finest upscale restaurant for the celebration, combining 2 private rooms just behind the counter seats. Seeing all those familiar faces and sharing the joy of working together again naturally brought smiles and lively conversations. Just as I thought the day would end on a high note, something unexpected happened. When I looked towards the counter to place an additional order, a customer walking in caught my eye. Looking closer, I realized it was my ex-wife, and she wasn't alone. She was with a man. Our eyes met, and she looked as startled as I felt, freezing in place. The man noticed and asked my ex-wife, "Who's that?" Snapping back to reality, she gave a wry smile and replied with a sigh, "Oh, that's my ex-husband." The man then said, "Oh, that guy," and looked at me with a smirk. There wasn't much left to say. She seemed to feel the same, promptly turning her back to me, and both of them took seats at the counter. I didn't let it bother me and continued chatting with my colleagues. However, on my way back from the restroom, my ex-wife called out to me. "Why are you here?" she asked with a cold tone in her voice. "I came back," I replied in the same tone. She laughed dismissively and remarked, "After being demoted, you sure had the guts to come back. You probably screwed up again, didn't you?" Giving me a pitiful look, the man sitting beside her seemed to be asking her about me. "Graduating from a prestigious college and then getting demoted makes no sense," he sneered. Irritated by their comments, I said, "Well then, ready to leave." However, my ex-wife quickly pulled the man close to her and gloated, "He's quite impressive, isn't he?" Without me asking, she began to brag about how he works for a top-tier company, how talented he is, and how his future is so much brighter than mine. Every now and then, she'd throw in a resentful comment about me. From time to time, her bitterness towards me mixed in. As for the man, while he said, "Don't talk like that, it's sad for your ex-husband," he didn't seem entirely displeased with her praises. He chuckled condescendingly at me with every nod he gave. I tried to tune them out, looking for the right moment to head back to my seat. Just then, a colleague heading to the restroom stopped in his tracks. "Hey, isn't that you, Jake?" My colleague recognized the man and addressed him. "Oh, it's a pleasure." "Quite the coincidence," Jake responded. It seemed they knew each other. They started chatting lightly, but the man kept stealing glances at me. "Wait, do you work with this guy?" Pointing at me, he asked my colleague. I wondered if they seemed close. My colleague looked surprised that the man didn't recognize me. "Hey, you can't talk to him like that. He's our new department head. And so young and impressive, you should greet him. I mean, seriously, this man, Mr. Stern, is something else. He's the youngest ever in our company's history to be promoted to this position." My colleague gleefully shared this, briefing me on the details about this Jake guy before taking off. Turns out this man is a sales rep from a major supplier who frequents our department. After hearing about me from my colleague, the man whispered, "Is Logan the one I've heard rumors about?" His face progressively paled. My ex-wife seemed momentarily stunned but soon snapped, "Wait a minute, you mean he's higher up than you?" and confronted the man with a frustrated look. Still pale-faced, the man muttered something about needing to greet me properly but was taken aback by my ex-wife's rebuke. There's no point in sticking around to watch their spat. I locked eyes with the man, saying, "So you're Jake, right? I'll remember that," with a pleasant smile. I made my way back to my seat, but I could still hear voices from behind. Glancing toward the bar, I saw my ex-wife and Jake having an ongoing dispute. When our eyes met, Jake quickly looked away, urging my ex-wife, "Let's leave now." He settled the bill with a face portraying sheer frustration. My ex-wife gave me one last glance before slamming the door on her way out. Soon after, I returned to my dream position at the company's headquarters. From day one, with a hectic schedule, I felt that old buzz, making me even more passionate about my job. Sometime later, I bumped into Jake at work. He immediately approached me, deeply bowing and apologizing for his rudeness that day. I told him I didn't mind at all anymore, but given his sincere regret, I offered, "Want to grab some coffee?" After a couple of sips, he let out a long sigh, finally appearing relaxed. We made small talk about work, but the conversation naturally shifted to my ex-wife. Apparently, they had a falling out. Whether it was her pride or something else, she ended up breaking things off with Jake. I couldn't help but be slightly baffled. Was she so set on snagging a well-educated, high-ranking man? I felt sorry for my ex-wife too. Even though she is beautiful, cheerful, and friendly with many good qualities, she seemed lost. Though Jake came off as a jerk that day, I'd heard from others that he's genuinely talented. I cheered him on, telling him to keep his head high. After work, as I stepped out of the office, my phone rang. The screen read Sarah. Before I could finish saying hello, Sarah started talking. "Hey, it's me. I'm coming back this Sunday." Her voice was as bubbly as ever. Since that inspection, Sarah and I had kept in touch. At first, our conversations were mostly about work. Sarah would often give me a piece of her mind, always offering emotional support. I think the reason I never gave up and aimed higher was probably because of her presence. "I know you better than anyone else. Have some confidence and just do it," she would say on the phone. Even though she's younger than me, it makes me laugh, wondering who's really the older one. Then on Sunday, I waited for Sarah at the JFK airport lobby. When Sarah saw me, her face lit up with a broad smile, and she hurried over. "I'm back," she said cheerfully, and Sarah hugged me. Being embraced in such a public place, I was taken aback and embarrassingly stuttered, "Welcome back." I tentatively put my arm around Sarah's back, not sure how to react in the situation. Then Sarah looked up at me with an expectant expression and said, "Don't you have something else to say?" I could feel everyone's eyes on us. It was hard to admit, but I looked at her and said, "I love you, Sarah." But she teased, "Is that all? Isn't there more?" making a mischievous face and urging me to say more. I felt like my face was on fire, but I knew I had to say it now. So I gathered my courage and proposed to Sarah right there. As Sarah and I communicated frequently, we became closer. We both knew our feelings for each other were growing. But with Sarah traveling to various branches nationwide and having long overseas business trips, we hardly got a chance to meet. During this time, I once confessed my feelings over the phone, but she told me she wanted to hear it in person. In time, we officially got married and became husband and wife. "Hey, look, I found this adorable mug and just had to buy it." Sarah seemed to have sneakily hidden it among the moving boxes, intending to use it from today. She happily laid the two out side by side and smiled. The new apartment we got for our life together with Sarah has a high-rise view, making me feel even more motivated. She wanted to settle down and had expressed her wish to retire early from her job. But they didn't want to let go of such a valuable employee. After taking a short break, she decided to work part-time at the headquarters. As for me, my role as a department head keeps me extremely busy. It helps that Sarah understands my job. She's good at supporting me and has been a tremendous help. Come on, put your back into it and have a great day. Sarah playfully smacks my back as I head out. I think she treats me a little rough, but when she does this, the day goes strangely well. I'll be off now. Take care, Sarah, I tell her, and as I leave, I can't help but notice how her dimples make her smile even more endearing. Today, I have to keep working hard to ensure that smile never fades. I can't always rely on her support. This new chapter of our life is bound to be busy, but I remind myself never to take my wife for granted. My wife, Samantha, spoke so softly it was barely audible, her face turning a deep shade of red. Seeing her so bashful took me by surprise. I found myself utterly captivated by her. But our relationship wasn't always like this. My name is Jack Andrews. I'm just an ordinary guy working for a medical device company. I once had big dreams and pursued them with all my might, but eventually I had to give up, realizing I lacked the talent. My parents had high hopes for me and always encouraged me to follow my own path, which led me to where I am now. Without dreams or ambitions, I felt empty, like I had no purpose. Some might say I should get married and start a family, but I'm still a bachelor with no girlfriend. It pains me that I can't give my mother the joy of grandchildren, but I have no choice. I can't give them what I don't have. Next week, I need to visit my parents. They live in the same state, just a short train ride away. They called me in a serious tone, saying they had important matters to discuss. Knowing my laid-back parents rarely asked me to come home, I sensed something significant had happened. I decided to comply with whatever favor they might ask, wanting to be a good son in other ways since I couldn't provide grandchildren. The day arrived and I returned to my childhood home after a long time. My parents run a diner with a shop on the first floor and their home on the second. As a child, I used to boast about taking over the shop, but I lacked the talent for cooking and gave up on that dream, making me hesitant to return home. However, it was strange to see the shop sign not out. They should be open every day except Thursday, where they closed just for today. I walked in, calling out, "I'm home, Dad. Mom, I'm back." Both of them were there, looking thinner and paler than I remembered. "What happened to you two?" I asked, hurrying to their side. They explained, heads bowed. A family restaurant had opened nearby, causing their diner to lose customers. Despite their best efforts, the customers only dwindled. Dad discovered that anonymous rumors were spreading about our diner being dirty and infested with cockroaches, tarnishing our reputation. Despite their efforts to dispel these rumors, business continued to decline, leading to debt and eventually making it impossible to keep the diner open. Even if we close the diner, the debt remains. Worst case, we might have to sell our home, Dad said, tears of frustration in his eyes, his voice shaking. I had never seen him like this. "Can't something be done, at least about the debt?" I asked. "The debt is $80,000. We're looking for a place to get a loan," Dad replied, hanging his head in defeat. He must have exhausted all his options. Desperately, he confessed the situation to me. In desperation, I turned to my mom. "Mom, can't you ask for help from your friends?" "Well, I did talk to them," she replied. "Actually, one of my friends mentioned she might be able to help. But there's a condition." I leaned in, eager to hear more. Regardless of the condition, it was worth listening if help was on the table. Yet Mom kept her head down, hesitant to elaborate. Encouraged by Dad, Mom finally broke her silence. The condition: she proposed marriage to her daughter. "What?" I exclaimed. "You know, I used to go to that flower arrangement class, right? That's where I met her. Her husband is a CEO of a leading company, and their daughter apparently doesn't have anyone she's seeing. According to Mom, this daughter, Samantha, is shy and hasn't been able to find a partner, even though she wants to get married. This friend of mine seems to be very family-oriented and said she would be willing to help us out if you marry Samantha and become part of their family. But Jack has the right to choose his own partner. I don't want to deprive him of his future because of our debts, Dad protested. No, I'll take the deal, I said, making my decision. I couldn't take over the family business, and I couldn't protect this place that had always been precious to me since I was born. So if getting married is what it takes to save the business, I'll do it. After all, she's a CEO's daughter. It's a rare opportunity for an ordinary guy like me to have a connection with someone like that. There was a part of me that thought it was a lucky break, a chance to help the business and maybe gain a partner and some connections. There weren't any downsides for me, so I decided to go ahead with it. But the day I met Samantha, I understood why she hadn't found a husband. She must be shy indeed. Her gaze occasionally wandered away, unable to look directly at me. On the other hand, I couldn't take my eyes off her. To be more accurate, I couldn't take my eyes off her figure. Her double chin was so prominent it looked like she didn't have a neck. She lacked a waistline, no curves, just a cylindrical shape. If I were to compare her shape to something, it would be to a certain blue, round-shaped robot from the future. I don't like to criticize people's appearances, but I have to admit she made a strong impression. If you asked me if I wanted to marry her, I'd say no without hesitation. But I wasn't in a position to say that right now. Nice to meet you, I'm Samantha. I'm Jack. Pleasure to meet you. Samantha shyly responded and made her greeting. I nodded in response, and after some discussion, we officially became engaged. A month later, we got married and officially became a couple. There was some discussion about living together, but marriage was a non-negotiable condition for repaying the debt. I had no reason to refuse. Perhaps understanding the situation, Samantha suggested that we don't force ourselves to live like a typical married couple but come together in our own way. So we ended up sharing a bedroom but not a bed. The so-called wedding night has not yet taken place. With Samantha's physique, sharing a bed would honestly be a squeeze. We were both used to living alone, so it was a bit awkward at first, but it seemed that Samantha had always aspired to be a typical wife. Good morning. I tried making breakfast. If you like, please have some, she said just before I left for work. Samantha, who had gotten up early, had prepared breakfast. Chicken soup, fish, and omelette. A hearty meal. The aroma of the food tickled my nostrils, stimulating my empty stomach. This is delicious. Even though I quit, I once aspired to be a chef. I have a discerning palate for food, so I can say with confidence Samantha's soup is truly delicious. And it's not just the soup. The seasoning of the fish is just right, and the omelette, its color, shape, and taste, are all perfect. The quality is as good as any restaurant. This is amazing. It must have been tough to make breakfast of this level, right? It's delicious, I said, engrossed in my breakfast. Samantha's face gradually turned red. I'm glad, I said, feeling a swell of pride. Be confident. I'm a diner's owner's son after all. Samantha, you're a great cook. With that, I finished my meal, not hiding my genuine opinion. Samantha shyly hid her face behind the tray she was holding. Well, I've never served my homemade food to anyone before. I'm happy though. She appeared extremely shy, and seeing Samantha genuinely happy was adorable. They say don't judge a book by its cover, and that might be true. Samantha, aside from her looks, has a very playful and adorable personality. She's so domestic that you forget she's a CEO's daughter, and she almost flawlessly manages household chores. Except, it seems that she's not very good at doing laundry. The other day she ended up turning all my shirts blue. She seems to still be getting used to sorting by colors. I'm sorry. They've turned completely blue, haven't they? I've made that mistake before too, I said, trying to comfort her. A mistake that would depress me if I had made it somehow becomes forgivable when Samantha does it. I slowly fell in love with Samantha. At first, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But by the time we had been living together for 6 months, I knew. One day, Samantha came home crying. What am I going to do? The doctor said I might not be able to have a baby one day. I can guess why. I don't necessarily expect us to have children, so don't cry so much, I tried to console her. But with my current figure, you won't be able to hold me, Jack, she said, choking up. Emotionally, I am perfectly able to love Samantha, but it's pretty tough with her 200-pound figure. While I was struggling for words, Samantha seemed to make up her mind, looking at me determinedly. I've decided I'm going on a diet. I want to live a long life, and I want children. Also, I want to walk proudly by your side, Jack. I can't stop Samantha when she says this while blushing. Samantha made up her mind, and thus she began her diet. Exercise is good for health, so I also joined her in the effort. I was just starting to worry about my waistline. I suppose I've put on some happy weight, it can't be helped. Samantha's cooking is too delicious. We went jogging together before work and walking every night, but as expected, it's not easy to keep up. I can't do it anymore, Samantha whined. I won't spoil you, I said firmly. This was a promise between me and Samantha. If she felt like giving up, I would be there to support her. So when Samantha looked ready to give up, I proposed something. Hey Samantha, I have a suggestion. What is it? How about we buy a dress? Here's my idea. I will buy the dress that you want to wear the most right now, and you will work hard on your diet so that you can wear that dress. It's easier for people to have a goal in front of them. That might be a great idea. I've never worn a dress before, Samantha said, getting on board with the idea. Additionally, we decided to separate our bedrooms. This was because Samantha wanted to do stretches and yoga at night. If I'm being watched, it's embarrassing, she said. When she makes a request like that, who am I to refuse? And so Samantha continued to put forth great effort. Half a year later, by the time we had been married for a year, Samantha had become astonishingly beautiful. I hadn't realized it because she was overweight, but she originally had a good figure. With her chest and butt standing out and her waist slimmed down, Samantha, now with a great figure, looked like a different person. Her weight dropped to the goal weight of 117 pounds, and Samantha came running to me beaming with joy. Jack, I'm going to try on that dress today. Really? I'm going to change in the bedroom. Wait for me here, Samantha said, heading to her bedroom. Come to think of it, for the past year, we hadn't slept in the same bed, had we? With the way Samantha is now, we could probably share a bed. In fact, isn't this the first time I've been allowed into her bedroom since she lost weight? Thinking like that, it felt almost like our wedding night. After all, Samantha had always strictly kept me out of her bedroom. It's your first time in my room, isn't it? She teased. Hey, I'm looking forward to our first night. My heart skipped a beat, wondering for a moment if I'd accidentally voiced my thoughts. As if she had read my mind, Samantha laughed. I'll be changed in a moment, she said, and shut the bedroom door. After a year together, we were comfortable enough to joke around like that, but her shyness hadn't changed. Just before she shut the door, I caught a glimpse of her blushing ears. After a little while, she called out, I put it on. Come in. Upon Samantha's invitation, I entered the bedroom. This is my first time wearing a dress. How do I look? There stood Samantha, blushing yet gracefully wearing the red dress I'd bought. She looked stunning, her beauty resembling that of a goddess, leaving me speechless. This is incredible. You look stunning, I finally managed to say. Samantha was that beautiful, enchanting, and alluring. Yet despite her appeal, she was blushing and fidgeting adorably. Do I look weird? She asked. Not at all. You're beyond beautiful. Really? Truly? Yeah, I'd rather not have you walk around outside like that, though. Upon hearing that, Samantha chuckled happily. Oh, stop it, but I'm flattered. I'm just telling the truth. I mean, what if some strange guy comes over? I muttered, a hint of anxiety in my voice. Samantha, in all her beauty, smiled. In that case, you'll protect me, won't you? Her blush was so very Samantha-like, and I chuckled in response. I resolved in my heart to protect Samantha at all costs and gently closed the bedroom door. From then on, time continued to pass. Welcome. Believe it or not, I took over my dad's restaurant. Quitting my job and paying off the debt was one thing. But it was no easy task to bring a reputation-damaged restaurant back to life. But now we transformed into a popular restaurant with lines from the morning. Jack, take this to table 5. Got it. Samantha, how's the meal for table 8? It's almost ready. Yes, it's Samantha in the kitchen now. When I explained the situation of the restaurant, Samantha said she wanted someone to try her cooking given the lack of popularity. Jack, you praise my cooking, right? That gave me confidence. To be honest, I was convinced that if Samantha cooked for the restaurant, it would surely succeed. That's how much I trust Samantha's cooking skills. She's always loved cooking. She even admitted to gaining weight from eating too much of her own cooking. That's actually an ideal skill for running a diner. Even though the customer traffic had dwindled, it wasn't zero. I pleaded with our regulars to try Samantha's cooking. Her culinary skills were soon recognized and customers started to return. In fact, some people even come in daily to eat. I help out in the kitchen, but primarily I handle the management and front of house work. Creating a place where Samantha can fully utilize her talents, that's my job. I'm home. The restaurant door creaked open around the evening. It was still early for dinner, so there weren't many customers. Into this quiet scene entered a boy carrying a backpack. "Welcome back, Jake." "Dad, I'm hungry." "Ask your mom to make something." "Yes." The elementary school boy who just walked in is Jake, our son. Actually, after Samantha's successful diet, she got pregnant and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. "Mom, can you make something?" "Oh, you really ate a lot, didn't you?" "Just wait a bit." Our son, nagging for food because he's hungry, calls out to the kitchen. Watching the scene, I can't help but smile. Right now, I'm happy. I have my loving wife, my adorable son, and I get to live with them both in the restaurant I've always wanted to protect. Samantha and I. It's crude to say, but we married because of the debt. It's probably not what you'd call a good match, but I can say this from the bottom of my heart. I'm glad I married you. How did you find that? Scott came home with a somber expression. What happened? I asked, nearly spilling the tea I was drinking. His company's performance had been poor recently, and I knew there were major personnel changes due to restructuring, but I never imagined it would hit Scott directly. Still, I think it's important to support him in times like this as his wife. Well, I guess we just had some bad luck. Times are tough, but I'm working too, so don't worry, I responded cheerfully. My name is Catherine. I'm 50 years old and currently working full-time in the back office. I live with my husband, Scott, who is 2 years older than me, my high school sophomore daughter, Julia, and my 72-year-old mother-in-law, Ethel. Ethel and I don't always see eye to eye, but since I'm working outside the house, we only see each other when I'm home, so I've decided not to worry about it. I told my daughter, your dad is a bit down because of the demotion, but try to act normally around him. However, Scott started to vent his frustrations on me. It's often said that people vent their frustration on those closest to them, those they trust the most, and indeed, all of it was directed at me. The next day, as I was cleaning the hallway during my day off, he passed by and suddenly said, "You've put on weight since we got married, haven't you?" Huh? Well, I am 50 after all. Even the gynecology pamphlets say that women tend to gain weight around menopause. But according to my company's health checkup, I'm not overweight, I replied. Forget the health checkup, your figure is too unsightly. You're just being lazy. If you're overweight, I'm embarrassed to be seen with you with your barrel-like figure, he said. I was at a loss for words when my husband suddenly said such a heartless thing. Then he added, ugly, and locked himself in his room. What? What's happening all of a sudden? I pinched my own side. I could tell that I had gained more than enough weight, but why now, all of a sudden? I felt as if I had been pierced by an arrow that had come flying at me out of the blue, so much so that I forgot I was holding the mop in my hand. It was that much of a shock. The mop slipped from my hand, clattering loudly as it fell onto the hallway floor. From that day on, Scott's attitude towards me became increasingly harsh. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law seemed to have listened to that weekend's argument and she jumped on it, doubling the power of the criticism. As I was climbing the stairs with a laundry basket, intending to hang the clothes, my mother-in-law descended from the second floor. No, she didn't descend, she just waited at the top of the stairs. She'd remark things like, "Oh, how awful. If only you weren't so fat, we could pass each other on the stairs. I wouldn't have to wait here because only one person can pass due to your obesity." Furthermore, when I served fried chicken for dinner, she'd say, "Isn't this what's making you fat?" and would remove my plate. She'd suggest that the three of us who aren't overweight should eat my portion. My gynecologist told me after middle age, you either get fat or you lose weight, but my mother-in-law was on the thin side. She was skinny like a dried-up tree. But I was still able to tolerate her petty harassment. Such nuisances had been commonplace, so I was somewhat used to it. What really pierced my heart was my husband's behavior. Since that incident, my husband Scott stopped talking to me. There was no thank you, or that was delicious, even when I served him breakfast. He'd just silently eat and then get up. He'd silently enter and leave the bathroom. We still shared the bedroom, but he just turned his back and played with his smartphone. I couldn't stand being treated as if I were invisible. One night in the bedroom, I gathered my courage and asked, "Hey, did I do something to deserve being ignored?" He responded, "Not really, but I just don't want to talk to anyone other than humans." I don't want to be seen as a family with someone this fat. If you care about me, lose some weight. I was disheartened by his words. But it's inevitable after middle age, and you know it, right? Even though I walk 1.2 miles for commuting, I'm trying my best in my own way, I said, trying to defend myself. I was trying hard to combat the weight gain due to aging. I continued, but he coldly turned his back and said, if the results aren't showing, it's the same as not trying. Don't talk to me anymore. From then on, he truly stopped responding to me. My mother-in-law continued to tease me about my weight, and whenever meat, fruits, or rice were on the table, she questioned, are you allowed to eat that? Are you aware? I ended up only eating salads and boiled vegetables. Scott just watched all of this without saying a word, only moving his chopsticks in silence. I may be at the end of my marriage. I began packing my belongings in my spare time. If I'm going to be treated as invisible by Scott, then maybe it would be better to just become invisible. When I told my daughter, I'm thinking about going back to my parents' house, she responded, yeah, I get it. I've seen Grandma and Dad always pick on you during mealtimes. It's hard to watch. I'll go with you, Mom. We can live at your parents' house, and I can still go to high school from there. Now tomorrow is the day when Scott's demotion officially kicks in, right after the winter break. Scott came over with a smile saying, let's have a drink, everyone. Just this once. Starting tomorrow, his life without subordinates will begin. I wonder if he finds that unbearable. But by this time, I've lost the will to go along with it. Even his plastered-on smile is irritating. Let's have a nightcap during dinner. I'll make wine spritzers, Scott said. This might be the first time he's spoken to me since the day after the announcement of his demotion. He added, Julia can have juice, and I'll make a wine spritzer for you too, Catherine. He placed the prepared wine spritzers at 3 spots on the table. Strange why all of a sudden, when Scott turned his back for a moment to look for the TV remote, I sniffed the drink he had made. What? I smelled it faintly, but it was definitely that smell. I recognized the faint smell because I've used it in cooking before. How could he think to make me drink this? I won't stand for it anymore. My mother-in-law's harassment, being ignored by my husband. I'll pay them all back. The wine spritzer pushed me over the edge. I'm sorry, could you get the camembert cheese from the fridge, Scott? It's from a local dairy farm and it's really delicious. I'm glad for the family time. Could you fetch it? Thinking he should at least do that much when I expressed joy at family time, Scott headed towards the fridge. While he was away and before my mother-in-law and daughter sat down, I switched my drink with the one on the seat to my right. The right seat, it was Ethel's seat. Scott returned with the cheese. Well, now that we've got the snacks ready, I'll call Julia and mother-in-law, I said loud enough for them to hear. Dinner's ready. The two of them made their way to the dining room and took their seats. Just a regular dinner. Except I didn't have any meatloaf or cornbread. Just salad, stewed chicken soup, cheese, and wine spritzer. Julia was having juice. Let's eat, Julia said, breaking the silence. Scott and my mother-in-law remained silent. I sipped on the wine spritzer Scott had made. He was watching me closely. I smiled and said, yeah, it's good. Huh. Scott murmured something under his breath, but I ignored him. I dug into the salad and then took another sip of the wine spritzer. Suddenly, a beam of red liquid shot out from my mother-in-law. It reminded me of Godzilla's fire breath. Wait. What, Grandma? What happened? My daughter stood up in surprise. Some of the liquid splashed on her salad. Did you choke? Are you okay? Julia grabbed a towel and quickly returned, but as she handed the towel to my mother-in-law, who wiped her mouth, she gasped. What? What is that? Grandma, your mouth, it looks like spicy cod roe. My mother-in-law began to freak out. Hey you, he put it in my drink. She shrieked and lunged at me. I coldly brushed her hand away. It wasn't me. Scott made it. Being brushed off and hearing that Scott was responsible for the drink must have been quite a shock. What? My mother-in-law screamed, her lips still covered in sauce, then turned to look at Scott. He was shaking. I leaned towards Scott, resting my hand on the table to exert some pressure. You thought you could hide it in the wine spritzer, didn't you? I could smell it a little because I've used it before. That was drop of hell, wasn't it? Drop of hell. I had bought it at a food fair in Alabama. It's not as famous as death sauce, but it has a hint of lime that I like for its homey taste. That hint of lime was what I smelled, which means he mixed a considerable amount into the drink. My mother-in-law must not have noticed due to the smell of the wine spritzer, or thought the lime smell was part of the flavoring. That's probably why she drank it. But regardless, this was a seriously malicious prank, extremely vicious. Wait, Dad did that. Julia wore a shocked expression. I actually intended for Catherine to drink it, Scott confessed. You should exchange it with yours. My mother-in-law, frothing at the mouth, also wanted to push it onto me. No way am I switching to that dangerous drink, I said in a low voice, maintaining my pressure on Scott. Then I cornered him. Explain why on earth you thought of doing something so outrageous. He replied, you were staying chubby, and spicy food boosts metabolism, so I thought I'd make it. Wow, that's pathetic. What a lame excuse, I laughed sarcastically. Did he really think that explanation would be acceptable? Utterly embarrassing. Pressured, my husband hesitated and slightly moved his chair back. I'm not crazy. This is a legitimate reason to support your diet. Here, exchange this with your cup and drink it. I made it for you. I closed the distance. My husband retreated. What are you saying? As the one who made it, you should taste it to see if it's delicious. Come on. I got up, took the cup containing the drop of hell from in front of my mother-in-law, and threw it in front of my husband. After ignoring me and treating me like air for so long, did you think I would honestly drink something you made with a smile out of the blue? Didn't it occur to you in your empty head? Isn't it too childish? Come on, taste it. As the one who cooked it, you should take responsibility. I slammed the table. At that sound, my husband, thinking he could escape with a little more backpedaling, stood up from his chair and backed off. After a tense silence, a quiet voice spoke. Drink it. My husband and I turned to the source of the voice. The voice came from our daughter Julia. Julia started to speak as if she was squeezing out the words. Taking your frustration out on Mom, who supports you the most when things don't go well at work, and repeating cruel treatments. This is like a childish prank. I might not be supposed to say this to my parents, but it's too childish and unbearable to watch. Our daughter stood up too and continued, facing her father. Is it wrong to be overweight? Mom wakes up early and walks to work, and she also brings lunch, so it's not like she's not trying. Then she turned to her grandmother. And you're going along with it, taking away my mom's dinner like fried chicken. What Grandma is doing is like middle school seniors and juniors. It's embarrassing. At those words, a flustered Ethel began to make a confused excuse. That's not it. I'm just worried that Julia's mom will gain any more weight. She must have wanted to be seen favorably by her granddaughter. In fact, Ethel liked Julia. But this time, Julia was harsh. Compassion is something that is conveyed to the other person. It hurt to see Mom's dinner, despite Mom looking sad. I wouldn't call that compassion. Mom hasn't had any issues in her checkups, but still taking away her side dishes is just mean. Ethel fell silent. And another thing, Julia turned back to her father. Mom goes to the gynecologist every month and keeps herself active. But despite all that, Dad just ignores her because she's put on some weight. What's his deal? That atmosphere he creates by ignoring her makes the house feel so tense. Can't you see that? Even Colonel Sanders and Aunt Stella from the cookie ads are plump. There's a term called happy weight, you know. If she gets older and becomes a lovely grandmother like Aunt Stella, I'd be thrilled. When I have kids and she's become a grandma, wouldn't it be great to say, Mom, you've come to some happy weight, and laugh about it? That's my dream. Could you please not ruin it for me? Her gaze was cold as ice as she spoke matter-of-factly. However, her words warmed my heart like hot milk with cookies. It was a pathetic sight to see a father scorned by his own daughter. And one more thing. She directed her words at her father. If you're going to ignore someone because of the weight gain due to aging, you should realize that with your thinning hair, you could easily be overlooked yourself. The tension was palpable at the dinner table. Her biting words had brought a chill to the living room, making it feel so cold you'd think even a banana would freeze. It seemed she had said all she wanted to. After a sigh, she turned to me. That's enough, Mom. It's time to let it go. It will be better for you. Her words took me aback. It would be better if I let go. That's right, you should let it go. As I said earlier, my dream is to see you holding my child, saying you've gained some happy weight and laughing. For my sake, I want you to be happy because that's part of my dream. So please let it go. Be happy and fulfill my dream. Her words filled my heart. Every single thing she said made me so happy that I didn't care about being ignored by my husband, the fat shaming from my mother-in-law, or the drink issue. Warm tears streamed down my cheeks. Yes, you're right. My vision blurred with tears. Hurry up, Mom. She patted my back and gave me a gentle push. Okay. I went to the kitchen and brought back a document I had been hiding for some time. What? My husband let out a startled exclamation. After about a month of being ignored, I started thinking I have my bags packed. Let's each go our separate ways. I presented the divorce papers with only my name written on them. I just wanted you to lose some weight. If you had slimmed down as I asked, I would have been content. I only realized it was venting after Julia pointed it out, but since you didn't lose any weight, I thought I'd torment you more. I didn't mean for this to happen. My husband began to panic. It's on those who didn't notice until things got serious, and what they're so upset about is incredibly childish. My daughter Julia retorted sharply. Living without her adorable granddaughter is no joke for my mother-in-law. In a panic, my mother-in-law Ethel interjected. Hey, Julia. You want to keep living with us, your grandmothers, don't you? In a voice as soft as stroking a cat. To this, Julia said, I decline. I don't want to breathe the same air as people who act like middle schoolers anymore, shutting down Ethel's plea. Hold on. Okay, I got it. I'll taste it, as you say. I'll take responsibility as the one who cooked it. Scott picked up the glass placed before him and gulped it all down at once. Just like Ethel earlier, Scott spewed a stream of red liquid from his mouth, resulting in striking lobster-like lips. There, see. I took responsibility, right, Julia? Julia took a picture of both of them with their lobster lips on her phone and said, Both of you are so lame. Mom, let's go, before exiting the living room. Yeah, I decided to follow her. So what's left behind is a dinner table splashed here and there with wine cocktail mixed with a drop of hell and a husband and mother-in-law with red lobster lips. I returned to my parents' house with Julia. When we explained the situation at home, both my mother and father were furious and went to confront Scott and Ethel. They brought back the divorce papers and I ended up getting divorced. My ex-husband Scott hit rock bottom in his career and ended up spending his remaining years without any significant achievements. Apparently he had a habit of ignoring things he didn't like, even with his subordinates, and that led to his demotion, which I heard about just recently. On the other hand, my ex-mother-in-law Ethel, who had been difficult and rarely went outside, seemed to be stuck in a stalemate in a two-person household. Eventually, I got a call saying, if you and Julia were here, it wouldn't be so stale. This is proven by the 17 years since Julia was born and we lived together. Please come back. I'll stop ignoring you. But there's no way I'm going back. Better gain weight while you can. Once you have grandchildren, you'll have more physical work to do, my mother joked with a smile. That's true. Today, as always, I'm walking to work. On the way, my boss drives by and stops the car, offering, want a lift? No thanks, I'm on a diet. Just get in, Catherine. Yes, I found a new boyfriend. Both of us have been divorced once, but because of that, we've both been through a lot and understand each other well. Dieting is good and all, but it would be a problem if you're late, he says while driving. I've never been late before, I respond, puffing up my cheeks. He glances my way and prods my puffed up cheek with his finger. Give me the time you saved by riding in the car today for our conversation, he says, ever the talkative boyfriend. My eldest son's wife, Lulu, smirked as she said, I bet you can play wonderfully. She probably intended to embarrass me at this family gathering. Lulu, with her only pride being her elite conservatory background, is desperate to claim the grand piano in my house. I, too, have reached the end of my patience. My name is Meyer Brown, and I just turned 60 this year. My husband has already passed away, and my 3 sons each have families of their own. I currently live alone in a mansion that is far too large for one person. Fortunately, my eldest son and his wife live nearby. It's comforting to know that my eldest son, Scott, wants me to consult with him if I have any problems. Perhaps it would be best to sell this mansion and move into an apartment or condominium more suitable for one person. But there's a reason I can't move. It's the grand piano that my late husband gifted me. As long as this piano is here, I don't think I'll ever leave this mansion. This grand piano is causing a lot of friction. Lulu is the one causing the problem. She's the kind of woman who flaunts her elite music university education, and I found her difficult to deal with since we first met. However, I didn't impose my opinion as she's the woman my son chose. Scott and Lulu got married hastily due to her pregnancy. But after the wedding, it turned out she was mistaken about being pregnant. I was dumbfounded, but my kind-hearted son, saying things like everyone makes mistakes, comforted her. Men don't understand the ulterior motives that women can have. I think Lulu really wanted to marry Scott. I don't mean to boast as a mother, but Scott is tall, high-earning, and handsome. He's also very gentle and kind. I just can't bring myself to like her when I think she took advantage of Scott's kindness. It seems Lulu finds me difficult to deal with as well. She tries to act respectful to me as a mother-in-law, but I can see through her belittling me at heart. It probably comes from the fact that I play the piano as a hobby. I've never played the piano in front of her. She's challenged me several times by saying things like, "I would love to hear you play," but I've always turned her down. I play the piano in memory of my late husband. That's how it's always been and will continue to be. I didn't want to explain this to her over and over. How could she laugh in such a sneering, mocking way and still sit in front of the piano? I'm truly fed up with being told this every time we meet. Last week, Lulu gave me a hard time again. It is comforting that we live close to each other, but it's a bit problematic because we share the same neighbors. Lulu loves gossip and has a habit of spreading baseless rumors. When she and Scott just got married, she told the neighbors that I was strongly against the marriage and that she had a miscarriage due to the stress, which was a complete fabrication. She was never pregnant in the first place, and a miscarriage was impossible. She was trying to portray herself as a tragic heroine by making me out to be the villain. Lulu, aren't you spreading lies about me to the neighbors? Even though they were newly married, I found it impossible to turn a blind eye to this. I confronted her. Lulu looked a tad guilty but eventually seemed to brazen it out with her typical smirk playing around her lips. Mother-in-law, this is so unfair. I don't know where you heard such rumors, but it's unfair to trust the words of others more than you trust me. Am I not a part of the family yet? The slick-tongued Lulu started to approach me, making it look as if I was at fault, even resorting to welling up her eyes with tears. I was stunned at her audacity, the nerve of her lying and evading the issue with such shameless boldness. My son Scott also came to know about this and gently chastised me, much to my chagrin. But considering this was happening so soon after their wedding, I eventually decided to let it slide and leave it unresolved. With a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law dispute, I was always at a disadvantage. Rather than having another baseless rumor spread, I decided to endure this one. Then recently, a similar situation occurred. One morning, the neighborhood ladies who were chatting in front of the house quickly changed their expressions as soon as they saw me. From their reactions, I had a hunch that something had happened. It was the exact same response as before. "Good morning," I greeted them, and they dispersed like startled spiders. I felt that another strange rumor was being circulated. As soon as I returned home, I reached out to the neighbor I was most friendly with. "I'm sorry for calling so early in the morning." While explaining the incident, I asked my friend if another strange rumor about me was being spread. She hesitated but then informed me about the rumor, that I was responsible for shortening my husband's life. The baseless gossip detailed that I had a penchant for extravagance and that my husband had to continue working even after his retirement, leading to his death from overwork. But my husband had already passed away by the time Lulu became my daughter-in-law. She shouldn't have any basis to speak about him. Upon hearing my explanation, my friend agreed with me. She promised to help clear up the misunderstanding with the neighbors, giving me some relief. I felt that the spread of the rumor would be prevented. However, once I was relieved, my anger toward Lulu started bubbling up again. After her marriage, Lulu quit her job to become a full-time housewife. She seemed bored during the day, so she'd often gather the young neighborhood wives and engage in gossip. She probably used some made-up rumor about me as fodder for their daily chit-chat. The fact that she used my dear late husband for entertainment was unbearable. I finished breakfast and decided to pay a visit to my eldest son's home. I arrived at Scott's house around 9:30 am. Scott had already left for work. When I called out from the front door, Lulu, with her hair all disheveled, appeared from the bedroom. "What, Lulu? You just woke up?" I was taken aback and raised my voice unintentionally. "May, my mother-in-law, it's quite inconvenient if you come over without informing me beforehand." What's the matter so early in the morning? Lulu, just woken up and seemingly grumpy, muttered her complaints. The living room was a mess, clearly not well cleaned. Even though I lived close by, I try not to interfere with my son and daughter-in-law's life and rarely visit their home. However, the current situation is unbearable. I'm sorry I didn't get in touch. It was an emergency situation. I apologize. After offering an apology for not getting in touch, I got down to the matter at hand. Couldn't you have resolved it over the phone? Why bother coming all the way here? She seemed profoundly bothered by my visit. She sat deep into the couch in her pajamas, crossing her legs. It almost felt like she was looking down on me. Standing in front of Lulu, I suppressed the anger swelling up inside of me. I cautiously asked her about the rumor without raising my voice. Then she snorted. Oh, that. Lol. Could you please explain what you mean? I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't spread strange rumors. Huh, but it's the truth, isn't it? Lulu grinned again, stating her point. On what basis are you claiming such a thing? I lost my cool due to her attitude, and my tone got harsher, yet she remained unperturbed. The grand piano is the proof. You pestered your husband to get it for you, didn't you? I've never seen you playing it. Lol. Lulu insinuated that I had whimsically made my husband buy a grand piano that I didn't even play. She understood the value of that piano. Of course, being a music college graduate, she would. Don't you think it's a sheer waste to beg for a piano that you can't even play? I'm starting to feel sorry for my father-in-law. Lol. Lulu completely mocked me. I was at a loss for words due to her audacity. Seeing me silent, she laughed. Can't rebut because it's true. I found it impossible to discuss my precious memories of my husband with this woman. It felt as if our cherished memories would be tarnished, so I could do nothing but stay silent. Going silent when the going gets tough, I stood up from the sofa and said to Lulu, "Sorry for disturbing you." She laughed in a victorious manner. As I exited the living room, her high-pitched laughter pierced my back. I felt frustrated and tearful when I got home. Since that rumor incident, I've been keeping a distance from my eldest son and his wife. Honestly, I don't want to see Lulu ever again. I do feel sorry for my son Scott. However, thinking about my son being stuck in the middle of this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue and struggling, I believe that the best solution is for me not to approach Lulu. Regardless of how much you try to avoid, there are times when avoidance isn't possible. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day are such times. On top of that, this year I will be turning 60. Scott called to celebrate my milestone birthday. My other sons and their wives, living out of state in places like Texas and Minnesota, seem to be coming home as well. They are planning to gather all the relatives, including my husband's sister, to celebrate my 60th birthday. I am truly happy to see my out-of-state children, their spouses, and my grandchildren after such a long time. I have no choice but to turn a blind eye to Lulu just for this day. I kept telling myself that. From the day before the birthday celebration, the grandchildren living out of state started returning home one after another, making the house bustling with activity. Usually being alone, the sudden increase in people almost made my head spin. The grandkids were all lively, running around the mansion. Among them, one girl, the daughter of my second son, quietly gazed at my piano. "Do you like the piano?" I asked. My granddaughter nodded. I remembered being consulted by my daughter-in-law about her being shy and reserved. Apparently, she was having trouble making friends even in kindergarten, which was a cause for concern. "Do you want to try playing?" At my words, my granddaughter's face lit up brightly. As I opened the lid of the piano, she reached out hesitantly. When I sat her on the chair, she asked in a tiny voice, "Can I play it?" "Of course, go ahead." My granddaughter pressed a key with her small finger, and a beautiful sound echoed. The spreading sound seemed to surprise her, and she repeated pressing the keys many times, closing her eyes to feel the spread and echo of the sound. Looking at her side profile, I thought I wouldn't mind leaving the piano to this girl. Hearing the sound of the piano, my daughter-in-law appeared, saying, "Sorry, mother-in-law." Seeing her own mother suddenly appear, my granddaughter seemed surprised, returning from her world of sound. "It seems like she likes the piano. Is she taking piano lessons?" I asked my daughter-in-law. She replied that they hadn't started her on piano lessons yet as they couldn't afford it. Indeed, my second son's family had many kids. They were raising 5 children. It must be true that they are financially strained. I see, you should rely on me more. Don't hesitate. My daughter-in-law nodded happily at my words and bowed her head, saying thank you. I wished Lulu was a bit like her. I was wondering who was playing, Lulu said loudly as she entered the room without hesitation. She glanced at my granddaughter sitting at the piano and scolded. It's not a toy. It's not a piano for a child to touch. You don't know its value and you can't play it, you audacious child. Lulu attempted to push my granddaughter away from the piano. My granddaughter, thinking she was being scolded, got off the chair with a scared look and hid behind my daughter-in-law. This piano is not for anyone but musicalites like me to touch. It's not a toy for children and certainly not for the elderly either. Her last statement was likely a sarcastic remark aimed at me. My daughter-in-law quietly bowed to Lulu and took my granddaughter to the yard. Lulu, who had been watching them leave with her arms crossed, tried to sit on the now empty chair in front of the piano. I hastily closed the lid of the piano. I really didn't want her touching my precious piano. It was a spur-of-the-moment reaction, and Lulu glared at me. This piano holds precious memories with my husband. I don't want someone who would push a child aside to play it to touch it. I'm sorry. Facing Lulu's glare, I smiled sweetly. She clicked her tongue. She must have felt my strong will to not let her play. Let me be frank since it's a good opportunity. This piano is wasted on you, mother-in-law. Don't you think it'd be more fitting for someone like me? I'd be happy to take it off your hands. Her eyes did not reflect the joviality of her words. It was clear that Lulu was serious. The next night, a party was held to celebrate my 60th birthday with all the relatives gathering. It had been a long time since everyone had come back home. Apart from my eldest son and his wife, my children and their spouses were at the forefront organizing a grand celebration for my milestone birthday. It was a bit embarrassing to put on the red cardigan they gifted me, but being celebrated by everyone was much more pleasant than I had anticipated. The celebration was made even more lively with a musical gift from my grandchildren. As everyone clapped at the end of the grandchildren's performance, Lulu suddenly chimed in. That's right, let's have the mother-in-law play the piano. Her suggestion seemed spur of the moment, but I could tell she had been waiting for this opportunity to embarrass me. At Lulu's words, my sons joined in. We've never heard you play. I had only played the piano when it was just my husband and me. My children had never heard me perform. With such a marvelous piano in your possession, mother-in-law, you must be quite the player, Lulu said with her signature smirk. I would only be a displeasure to your ears, and it'd be embarrassing to perform during such a celebration. I tried to escape the situation with a harmless brush-off, but Lulu kept pressing on. Oh, so you got such an expensive piano but can't play. That would mean you're quite the spendthrift. Guess the rumors were true, huh? At her continual taunts, even my eldest son, normally quite reserved, raised his voice. Hey now. But Lulu was not one to be quieted by such words. Scott looked at me with a troubled expression. I suppose it can't be helped. I'll make an exception today. Unable to bear seeing my son's troubled face, I started walking towards the piano. A quick patter of small footsteps followed, and my granddaughter, who loved the piano, clung to my side. She was clearly looking forward to hearing me play, her cheeks slightly flushed with anticipation. I wonder what kind of performance it will be. 3 blind mice at best, I assume, Lulu sneered. As I opened the piano lid and took my seat, her attitude caused the daughters-in-law to furrow their brows. Lulu was not particularly liked among them. She always took full advantage of her status as the wife of the eldest son, often looking down on the others. The piano keys, which I hadn't touched in a while, felt cold and comforting. Since I had it tuned regularly, the piano was always ready to be played. After warming up my wrists, I let my fingers dance across the keys. The first piece I chose was Chopin's Ballade No. 4 in F minor, Op. 52. From its serene beginning to the technically demanding parts, it is a challenging piece. Lulu appeared to recognize the piece as soon as I started playing and froze with a shocked expression on her face. Playing the piano after a long time somehow made all the unpleasant things feel irrelevant. I played several technically challenging pieces my husband loved and ended with a jazz arrangement of a popular cartoon theme song that my children loved. The moment all the performances were over, my entire family cheered and applauded me. My little granddaughter wrapped her arms around my knee excitedly exclaiming, "Awesome, awesome." The only one who seemed discontent among the relatives was Lulu. I flashed her a warm smile. So it was true that Mom was a pianist. I thought Dad was joking. My eldest son Scott commented with a hint of excitement in his voice. I had made sure that my children, especially Scott, would never discover that I was a pianist. After graduating from the Vienna Conservatory, I had started my journey as a pianist. That's when I met my husband and gave birth to Scott. When my mother-in-law forced me to choose between the piano and my husband, I chose my husband and Scott after much anguish. To ensure that Scott wouldn't feel burdened by this, my husband and I hid this truth. After I declared I would never touch the piano again, my husband bought this piano for me, asking that I play only for him. I later found out that my mother-in-law also played a role in purchasing the piano. It seemed they bought this piano, replacing the dream they had taken away from me. To me, this piano was a precious item that affirmed the bond with my husband and the love from my mother-in-law. I had no intention of handing it over to someone who merely desired its monetary value. By the way, I don't think I've ever heard Lulu play. Mom, would it be okay if Lulu played a piece? Scott asked me. What? Isn't Lulu a graduate from a top music school? You've never heard her play? I was somewhat surprised by Scott's words. Then I remembered. There's no piano at Scott and Lulu's house. That did seem unusual. Lulu, would you mind playing something? I'd love to hear it too. I stood up from the chair in front of the piano, intending to let Lulu take my place, but Lulu didn't sit down. Just the other day, she was leaning back comfortably in this chair, and now she seemed to recoil in fear. She was pale. I'm not feeling well today, she excused herself, trying to escape the situation. Not feeling well? After all that food and drink? Or is there another reason you can't play the piano? I couldn't believe it and decided to confront her. Lulu mumbled some excuses. You wouldn't lie about graduating from a top music school, would you? Lulu flinched at my words. What? Was I right? Have you been lying about everything except the pregnancy? I unintentionally raised my voice. Lulu's face turned pale. She looked like she was about to faint. You're not telling me you lied about graduating from a top music school? Scott also questioned Lulu, seemingly surprised. Lulu fell silent as if she had forgotten how to speak. Our youngest 3-year-old grandchild toddled over, pulling out the leaflet from Lulu's back pocket. She handed it to me innocently, saying, Here. Maybe she was trying to diffuse the tension in her own small way. I smiled at her, saying thank you, and took the leaflet, only to be shocked. The leaflet was advertising a high-priced used piano purchase service. The likely phone-confirmed purchase price was scribbled on the leaflet in ballpoint pen. Lulu, you were planning to sell my piano? I couldn't hold it back anymore. I yelled at Lulu and showed the leaflet to the relatives. The whole family peered at the leaflet, staring at Lulu in disbelief. She seemed unable to bear their gaze and ran home as if escaping. The person who suffered the most from this commotion was my eldest son, Scott. The wife he had always believed in had been proven to be a big liar. We couldn't find the right words to comfort Scott. Afterwards, Scott and Lulu divorced. It seemed that Scott had reached his limit with Lulu's incessant lies. Moreover, Lulu had a habit of spending extravagantly and was secretly in deep debt. She apparently planned to repay the debt with the money from selling my piano. Once Scott found out about Lulu's debt repayment plan, he immediately filed for divorce. Lulu, who had lived a married life full of lies, was now jobless and supposedly hiding out at her parents' home. I hear debt collectors are visiting her parents' house daily. I decided to open a small piano school afterwards. Some neighborhood kids are attending. The piano seems to emit a joyous sound when played by the children. Apparently, my granddaughter has also started taking piano lessons. After hearing me play, the wife of the second son was so moved that she decided to have her child learn the piano. I'm subsidizing the monthly piano lessons. The once quiet mansion is now filled with the voices of children, becoming quite lively. I believe my husband would be delighted.